No, you got.
Hang on. I'm back where I was. Hang on.
What?
I mean, I'm not going into.
Good morning, everyone. Back in a moment. Good morning, everyone. So we start with the health and safety announcement. There's no fire alarm drill anticipated today, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it's safe to return. Toilets are available in the stairwell of the building on each floor landing. Water is available from the water cooler in reception. And finally, please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. Good morning, I'm your chair, Councillor Ollie Davey, and welcome to this, well, it's not rescheduled, Planning Committee meeting on Monday the 9th of February. Sitting to my right is the Vice Chair, Councillor Eileen Wragg, and the supporting officers present today are Wendy Ormsby, Development Manager, Damien Hunter, Planning Solicitor, and Amanda Coombs, Democratic Services Officer. And the presenting officers for the applications today will be Senior Planning Officers Nigel Barrett, Jill Himsworth, and Wendy Ormsby. We will also have Mr. Ian Winter, Environmental Health Officer, present for the first application. Ian's specialism is noise and acoustics. The meeting today is being streamed live to the Council's YouTube account, so can I remind all members and officers contributing to the meeting to use a microphone or your comments will not be heard. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members and declarations of interests. I'll just advise on behalf of the committee that I think we've all been lobbied or had information from the applicants and some of the objectors as well. So we've had quite a bit of correspondence one way and the other. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Davey.
I am present and I have no other interests to declare.
Councillor Wragg.
Yeah, present declaration of interests as has been stated, I think. Okay.
No, I need to take it, Councillor Wragg. If you
Okay,
could just-
then it would be the Dunkeswell one, 250382 and 250383 and 232740.
And the declaration is?
Been lobbied.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
I've been lobbied on Dunkeswell and Holston at Watman's Lane. That's it, thank you.
Is Holsden Courton Lane one application?
Sorry?
Is that two applications or one Holsden Courton Lane?
Just have to double check.
Do you want to turn your mic on?
Oh, yeah.
I'll have a look. Councillor Barlow. No, someone's got their mic on. Councillor Barlow.
I do apologise. Oh, it seems to be working, but there we go. Yes, I'm present, and I have no further declarations other than the Dunkeswell where I have been lobbied. That's all I'm aware of.
Councillor Bloxham. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'm the ward member for the Dunkeswell application, and like everyone else, I've had emails on it as well.
Sorry, what application was that? I didn't hear you.
The first one.
The first. Councillor Chamberlain. No. Councillor Chapman.
Present, Wendy. Dunkeswell, predetermined.
Councillor Collins.
Present, thank you, and nothing further than the aforementioned lobbying.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Heath. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, present, and I've been lobbied on Dunkeswell. Thanks.
Councillor Hughes.
All right. Yeah, present, and the only item is item 8, the Dunkeswell not ahead. That's the only one I've been lobbied on. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Present, and I've been lobbied like other councillors on the first item. No other declarations.
Councillor Levine.
Present, am the ward member for Dunkeswell. I've been lobbied endlessly about it, but I would like to thank officers because I put in a planning application last week for an improvement in the weather. And look, they've done it without any problems. Thank you.
And Councillor Smith.
I am present and no further declarations I'm aware of at this time.
Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Speakers for today's applications can be found on pages 4 and 5 of the agenda pack. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meetings, pages 6 to 10. Is it members' wish that as the chair I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of February as a true and accurate record? All in favour? No comments on that one? Okay, thank you. Any abstentions? A few of you not here for that one. Okay, thank you. Any against? No. Okay. Have we had any apologies, Amanda?
Just one from Councillor Howe.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest we've done. Matters of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, to agree any items to be dealt with after the public have been excluded. There are none of those. And we move on to agenda item 7, planning appeals statistics, pages 11 to 28 in your agenda pack, and an update from Mrs. Ormsby, Development Manager. No, don't move it, Yehudi, if you've logged into it already.
Good morning. So in terms of the appeals, not too much to comment on specifically. I think in terms of determined applications, the first one on the list, 242290 FUL, land adjacent Grove Cottage Shoot. Members may recall that application came to committee. It was with an officer recommendation to refuse and was refused by committee, and that appeal was dismissed with all of the reasons for refusal upheld. Then the only other ones of note we already commented on last committee, which were the two the outcome of the two inquiries for the NHS drive-through vaccination centre at Greendale Farm and the land north of Unit 4, Greendale Farm Shop. Both of those appeals were dismissed and the enforcement notice is upheld. As I said, we did touch on that last week. Last week, it was not last week, it was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? So nothing else of particular note to raise unless members have got any questions. Thank you.
questions this month. Amazing. Okay, in that case, we can move on to agenda item 8. Planning applications 250382 VAR, 250383 VAR, 250384 VAR, and 250944 V106 for Dunkerswell Raceway, Dunkerswell, and that's pages 29 to 68 in your agenda pack. So I will go over to Nigel Barrett, Senior Planning Officer, who's going to present the report on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Dunkerswell Raceway is an established kart racing circuit located within the Blackdown Hills, the designated Blackdown Hills National Landscape. The slide that's being shown at the moment shows the application, the raceway site, in relation to a number of other local features, such as Dunkerswell Airfield, Dunkerswell Village, Flightway Business Park, and to the west, the village of Sheldon that you will see towards the top left-hand corner of the image, just being highlighted now. Thank you. So yeah, application site here, Airfield, Dunkerswell, Sheldon Village. The raceway hosts two types of kart racing in the form of kart club race meetings, and is available for leisure karting purposes as well. The management of the circuit is currently achieved via a series of planning conditions across a number of historic planning permissions, together with a Section 106 legal agreement that was entered into with the then operators of the circuit back in 2010. Now, the main controls, the existing activities and restrictions that are set out in the image before you, that are controlled via conditions and the 106 agreement, currently restrict race karting to 18 days over 9 weekends per calendar year, together with an additional 15 Saturdays per annum, equating to 33 days in total. The legal agreement requires that 7 days prior written notice of karting events be provided to the council. The hours of racing on Saturdays are restricted to between 9 AM and 6 PM, and on Sundays to 10 AM to 11 PM, and thereafter 12 noon until 6 PM. So no racing is permitted between 11 AM and 12 noon. Oh, okay.
Yep, we haven't got to that yet, Brian. Nigel's still explaining the current situation and what is proposed.
I have.
Okay, yeah, it would appear that right. The presentation wasn't being streamed live on YouTube, so we lost a bit of it there.
Start again.
Probably better to start again.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Nigel, just flip back a couple of pages, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Dunkerswell Raceway is an established kart racing circuit located in the Blackdown Hills, the designated Blackdown Hills National Landscape. The image you see before you shows the location of the raceway site relative to its locality. As will be seen, it's immediately adjacent to Dunkerswell Airfield. Dunkerswell Village lies to the southeast, with Flightway Business Park just to its north, and the village of Sheldon lies across a valley to the west of the raceway, as you can see from the pointer on the image. The circuit gives host to two types of kart racing presently, in the form of kart club race meetings, and also provides for leisure karting. Management of the circuit excuse me, is currently achieved via a series of planning conditions across several historic planning permissions extending back to the late 1990s, together with a Section 106 legal agreement that was entered into with the then operators of the circuit back in 2010. The main controls and obligations set out in the legal agreement, which are listed in summary point form here, first of all, restrict race karting to 18 days over 9 full weekends per calendar year, together with an additional 15 Saturdays per year, which equates to 33 days in total. The raceway is obligated to provide 7 days prior written notice of race karting events to the council. The hours of racing on Saturdays are restricted to between 9 AM and 6 PM, and on Sundays to 10 till 11 AM, and thereafter from 12 noon until 6 PM. Racing is expressly prohibited between 11 AM and 12 noon, the so-called church hour, which formed a key component of the 106 agreement. It also restricts the sound levels of race karts to 85 decibels, measured at a fixed point that is defined on a plan that accompanies the 106 agreement, which is this plan, and I'm just highlighting the annotation of point X within the circuit. Going back to the obligations, there is a general application of sound levels of 73 decibels when expressed as an LAEQ over 1 hour, and 65 decibels when expressed as an LAEQ over 8 hours applied at other times. The current 106 also prohibits race events on the first 2 Saturdays of each month at the 85 decibel level, or during any third consecutive Saturday within the month. At these times, the lower sound levels set out in the point here apply. The current proposals before you seek to vary the pattern of karting via the removal and/or variation of conditions attached to 3 of the historic planning permissions. And these changes are summarised in point form on the slide that is showing before you now. The Raceway are seeking race karting on 14 full weekends per year, with the maximum sound limit retained at the current permitted limit of 85 dB. The application is also seeking additional race karting, again at a maximum sound level of 85 dB, on a further 6 individual Saturdays or Sundays per year, with no more than 3 of these 6 days to be Sundays. It is also proposing race karting, again with the maximum sound level retained at 85 decibels, on 5 Fridays per calendar year between the hours of 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock to enable testing for race day weekends that follow. The Raceway is also seeking for permission for additional practice karting sessions on 3 weekdays per year, subject to a reduced maximum noise limit of 80 decibels between the hours of 9 AM and 4 PM. It is proposed to amend the permitted hours of racing on Saturdays to between 9 AM and 5 PM. It is also proposed to remove the current restriction, or prohibition, I should say, on racing during the 11 AM to 12 noon hour, but to conclude racing an hour earlier than it's currently permitted. So 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. And it is also proposed that the following of any scheduled successive race weekends be followed by a minimum equal number of non-race weekends. Finally, the proposed changes seek an increase in the number of permitted leisure carts from 12, to which it's currently restricted, to 24. These would continue to be subject to the current noise limit of 73 dB. So, I've prepared this slide, which will hopefully set a bit of wider context for the changes I've just described, and hopefully provide a little bit of additional clarity and understanding. So the proposals seek an increase in the overall permitted number of racing days from 33 to 42 days per calendar year, inclusive of the proposed practice days, which equates to a 9 days increase per calendar year, and around about a 27% increase in the number of days in percentage terms. The applications are seeking an increase in the permitted numbers of hours of racing per calendar year from 423 to 524, again inclusive of the proposed practice days, which equates to an increase of just over 100 hours and just shy of a 24% increase in percentage terms. The changes seek an increase of 1 day in the number of days, racing weekend days, around about 3% increase over existing, together with a redistribution with a potential maximum increase in the overall permitted number of Sundays for racing from 9 per year at the moment to potentially 17 per calendar year. An increase of 8 Sundays equating to an approximate 89% increase. Shorter hours of racing by 1 hour are proposed on Saturdays, with an earlier 5 p.m. finishing time instead of 6. The number of hours of racing on Sundays would be unchanged, with the proposed earlier finishing time of 5 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. enabled by the loss of the current 11 a.m. to 12 noon prohibition. The applications are seeking, again, racing on 5 Fridays per year. No Friday racing is permitted at present, thus enabling up to a maximum of 5 3-day weekend events per year, plus racing practice sessions on 3 further days per year at a lower noise level, where there is none permitted at present. And finally, the following of successive race weekends by the minimum of an equivalent number of successive non-weekends thereafter, not entirely dissimilar to the gap between race weekends in place at present in the form of the restrictions upon the first 2 Saturdays of each month. The fourth of the 4 applications that are before you, seeks the discharging of the 2010 legal agreement. Without this, if the variation proposals that are before you were to be agreed, there would then be conflict with the obligations within the 2010 legal agreement. So, aside from the variation in the historic conditions, the proposal seeks to discharge the existing legal agreement. The proposals envisage future control over raceway activity via a noise management plan. And it is contended as part of the submissions that this would provide sufficient comfort as to the enforceability of future controls going forward. And I will touch upon that again towards the end of the presentation. In terms of the main issues, the main material issues, impact on residential amenity, obviously very much a key issue, and not least in regards to the impact upon the residents of Sheldon. And the issue has been very carefully considered and assessed by environmental health officers, having regard to noise impact assessments, technical advice notes, the noise policy statement for England, as well as the submitted noise management plan. The assessment that's been conducted concludes that the noise impacts do not amount to a statutory noise nuisance. As per the noise policy statement for England, the noise from the karting has been classified as predominantly falling within a level that is defined as no observed adverse effect, with any increased noise levels falling within the lowest observed adverse effect level during circumstances when the wind direction is from the southeast, thereby carrying noise in the direction of Sheldon Village. But it is the impacts from these that the noise management plan seeks to mitigate. And subject to compliance with the noise management plan, which does include mitigation measures, event frequency controls, review of noise management at the discretion of the council, as well as a complaints procedure, noise impacts are concluded to be likely to remain low and acceptable in terms of the effects upon residential amenity. In regards to the impact on national landscape tranquility, this is recognised as an important element in both national and local planning policy, including within the adopted and emerging draft Blackdown Hills National Landscape Management Plan. And it is acknowledged also that the test of tranquility, which is a difficult one to quantify, and the national landscape is slightly different to that of impact upon residential amenity. In essence, the change to tranquility here can be summarised as an extra 9 days a year, albeit not at a level deemed to be intrusive in terms of statutory noise nuisance, particularly given that 3 of the proposed 9 additional days racing would be at the reduced noise level of 80 dB as opposed to 85. There is an argument that, it's undisputed that there is already a level of noise intrusion created from the raceway activities at present, as well as, to an extent, noise from aviation activity generated by the adjacent Dunkeswell airfield. As such, the extent of the additional impact would arguably be limited owing to the perceived modest increase in the number of days per year that race carts would operate in the context of a year as a whole. Taken together with the absence of objection from environmental health officers, your officers feel that objection on the basis of a material increase in impacts upon tranquility could be difficult to substantiate. The overall frequency of occurrence of race events and the time periods over which they would take place are considered on balance to remain limited. On the issue of commercial viability, officers feel that little evidence little robust evidence has been provided as to any current issues affecting the commercial viability of the raceway, and therefore it is unclear how the proposed variation to the pattern of activity would be essential or necessary to address any such issues. In terms of the contribution that the raceway provides to the tourism economy, it has been submitted by the raceway that race event weekends do attract a substantial number of visitors to the area, with many using accommodation, local accommodation, with ancillary spending in local facilities. The raceway, in addition, offers a cafe bar, providing an in-house food and beverage offering, including Sunday lunches, and it makes use of local contractors such as electricians, drainage engineers and steel fabricators. It has also been advised that it has recently been added to the list of tourism attractions published by the Devon Attractions Board. It's contended that the changes will increase the economic contribution that the raceway provides to the area by increasing the prominence and level of patronage at events and the potential for repeat visits through development of a regular and well-known programme of events, which would be in line with one of the objectives of the National Landscape Management Plan. By way of an update to the report, we have received a consultation response from the Council's Economic Development team, which is supportive of the proposals from an economic standpoint. As I say, these comments received towards the end of last week, so were too late for inclusion within the report that is before you. There is much concern locally as to the proposition of the use of a management plan to control raceway activities in the future as against the existing Section 106 agreement that is in place. Now, the enforcement of the Section 106 obligations can only be achieved via court injunction with its associated timescales and costs to the council. As part of the assessment of the current applications, we have sought a barrister's legal opinion in regard to the efficacy of a noise management plan as opposed to a Section 106 legal agreement, in regard to the effectiveness and robustness of controls, and as to whether it represents a viable option given the existing situation where the site activity is currently governed by a series of different planning permissions and the 106 agreement itself, which in combination form quite a complex and complicated framework for enforcement. Now, the opinion we've received from the barrister is that compliance with a robust noise management plan could reasonably be controlled either by way of conditions or by planning obligations. And Counsel, the barrister, has expressed no particular legal advantage to one over the other. National planning practice guidance advises that conditions should be used in preference to obligations where possible. In the case of any breach of a planning condition requiring compliance with the noise management plan, more immediate breach of condition action could be taken, against which there would be no right of appeal on the part of the applicants. Failure to comply with a breach of condition notice constitutes an offence for which prosecution may be brought in the magistrate's court for the offence of contravention of said notice, for which a person found guilty is liable on conviction to an unlimited fine. Also, whilst a planning obligation could provide more flexible means of enabling variations to a noise management plan, unless there were detailed provisions enabling the council to make such changes unilaterally, it is likely that they would need to be agreed between the parties, i.e. the council and the raceway. So, conditions to secure compliance with the noise management plan could therefore enable more direct challenge to breaches of the plan via enforcement via breach of condition action, which arguably contrasts with the existing situation where, as I've already explained, breaches of the current 106 agreement may only be challenged by an injunction, which, aside from involving lengthy processes, is also thought to lack flexibility. The noise management plan would enable a more periodic review at the council's discretion of the raceway's activities, with, where necessary, changes agreed, whilst ensuring that the council retains the necessary level of control so as to prevent or mitigate against noise intrusion above the agreed levels going forward. It's therefore contended that this could actually strengthen rather than weaken the council's ability to more directly enforce controls over the raceway's operation. So, just to really summarise here, it is a finely balanced set of arguments in the view of officers. In terms of the arguments in support, as you'll see here from the bullet points, the introduction of a noise management plan could strengthen existing controls and review mechanisms and enable more direct enforceability via planning condition. The existing permitted noise levels allowed under the current Section 106 that's in force would remain unchanged. The overall percentage of race days from 9 to 11.5% of the days per calendar year is perceived to be limited. The existing acoustic environment, which includes noise from the adjacent airfield, and therefore noise from the raceway's activities should be considered in this context. The assessment by the environmental health officers has concluded that although audible, noise during race events is not considered intrusive to residents in line with the relevant guidance on noise, with the anticipated change in noise exposure to remain within the minor impact category in line with the noise policy statement, with no significant adverse effects through the proposed increase in either operational days or cart numbers. And the reduced practice day noise limits, 3 practice days at 80 decibels as opposed to the permitted 85. Earlier race and practice session finishing times and shorter Saturday operating hours. Similar balance between quiet periods and race periods to the existing in terms of events on successive weekends. Economic and tourist benefits to the area from increased activities and events, and the doubling of a number of permitted leisure carts within the currently permitted noise limits, subject to time limits as set out in the noise management plan. Against the proposal is the 27% or so increase in the number of race days, including the rear distribution and potential near doubling of Sunday racing over that currently permitted. The just shy of 24% increase in the total number of permitted hours of racing, including practice days per year. The one-day increase in racing on weekend days. The additional racing on 5 Fridays per calendar year, where none is currently permitted at present, thus enabling up to 5 3-day weekend events in total, where none are permitted at present. And finally, race practice sessions on 3 further days per calendar year at the lower 80 decibel noise level, where none permitted is at present. So the key test is whether the proposals would strike an appropriate balance between the patterns of karting, and principally the race karting, activity as existing and those that are being proposed. Officers feel, on balance, that the case weighs marginally in favour, having regard to the absence of any objection from its environmental health officers, the broader context of the ratio of racing to non-racing days per year that would be maintained. To a limited extent, the trading of an increased number of race days for arguably more sensitive finishing times, and the view that the noise management plan via condition can ensure a more robust control and enforcement of management of events and activities than exists at present. It is therefore recommended, finally, that the variations to the 3 historic permissions be accepted, and that the Section 106 agreement from 2010 be discharged. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, for that very full explanation. Colin.
Is it possible to ask Nigel a couple of questions?
We'll do that after speakers.
Right.
Yeah, that's the order I've got on my list
okay,
anyway.
as long as I can ask them, is the main thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm first.
Okay, don't fight, children. It'll be all right. You'll all get your turn. Yeah, well, that is the tradition, yes. Okay, so we have a number of objectors. I'm going to ask you to please stick to the 3 minutes that you're allocated. Obviously, we'll allow you a few seconds over, but if you're not looking like winding up by then, we will ask you to do so. So the first speaker I have, and the list, by the way, is in your agenda pack, is Ben Wilson, who is speaking on behalf of Peter Hill. Thank you. And if you just... No, that's fine. If you come round behind the lectern, when you press the right-hand button, it will start the timer. So when you're ready, just press the right-hand button on the little gizmo in front of you. And
We can't hear you.
So hang on. Yeah, so I was just going to say,
sorry,
as a matter
that is not to do with me. It is to do with the acoustics there. If you're underneath that and you're right at the back, it is very hard to hear. We could try turning the sound up higher. Can we do that, Amanda? Can we get the sound levels higher? I mean, I could just ask, I suppose I could just ask that all speakers get as close to the microphone as they can. Can you hear me now?
I was just going to say, I was going to just make that observation from over here. Which
Ben,
is
if
that-
you just switch the, yeah, otherwise you're running into your time. Okay, but it is difficult at the back there, I acknowledge, and that is to do with the acoustics in this room, I'm afraid. Poor design. Okay, over to you.
Chair, members of the committee, we all understand that you must consider conflicting priorities when making these important decisions. In exceptional circumstances, you may approve a planning application which is contrary to policies, best practice or rules, if such an application delivers other benefits such as jobs, economic or community impact. It's already clear that the Raceways applications breach policies and best practices. They will contend that this is justified because the proposals bring high quality employment or secondary benefits in the form of tourism, innovation or wider community impact. To believe any of this would be false, the applications will deliver none of those benefits, and I'll briefly explain why. Regarding employment, the Raceway currently provides very few full-time or skilled roles. Its model centres on weekend racing during the dry months, and this application explicitly seeks more weekend racing. That does not create sustainable employment. It expands low-paid, low-skill, seasonal weekend work, and wider economic benefit will be negligible. Regarding the local tourism sector we spoke about earlier, to be clear, the UK karting culture centres on self-contained on-site camping, not hotel stays and not restaurant visits, a fact which is confirmed by Motorsport UK's own website and online forums. Visitors bring trailers, campers, their own food and spend the weekend inside the track's perimeter. Any economic benefit to the local hospitality sector will always remain negligible. Regarding innovation, large motorsport tracks like Silverstone are part of automotive clusters which underpin regional engineering, education. They're important to the local jobs and innovation. Dunkeswell has no links to the supply chain, no local business spillover, and delivers substantially nothing by the way of education or innovation to the region. Regarding community impact, karting has high barriers to entry. The cheapest session online at the moment is £46 a person, and the 1.4 metre minimum height excludes basically all children under the age of 12. This is not a grassroots sporting organisation. If the council wishes to depart from protocol and support grassroots sports, there are many community facilities in the district that would be better aligned with Sport England objectives, and they would bring some actual lasting benefit to people other than shareholders. Lastly, I return to the most fundamental change proposed in this application, which is replacing the legally binding Section 106 with the self-monitored Best Endeavours Noise Management Plan. Since June 2014, the operator has breached the existing conditions on more than 20 occasions, routinely ignored officers' warnings to cease, and asserted that karting is somehow now quieter while refusing to reduce noise limits. There is no credible basis for replacing enforceable control with voluntary compliance. Councillor Paul Hayward recently said of another planning application, are you 100% certain the purported benefits of these applications will outweigh the very real risk of harm? If you have doubt or reservations, then you must refuse. So please, ask yourselves, are you clear that these applications will benefit East Devon more than they will harm it? Can you trust the raceway operators to adhere to a self-regulated noise management plan? The answer to both of these points is obviously not. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in on time. Okay, next is Bob Nelson, who is speaking on behalf of Caroline Clark.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak against the application before you on behalf of Caroline Clark of Sheldon Parish. But I also speak in support of the Blackdown Hills Parish Network and as chairman of the Blackdown Hills National Landscape Management Partnership. Councillor Yehudi Levine is your representative on that partnership board. The 1949 Act, which set up national parks and national landscapes, was clear about the purpose of protected landscapes. It was then, and it is now, to conserve and enhance natural beauty. Natural beauty has been defined by Natural England, the body which decides designation, as landscape quality, scenic quality, relative wildness, and relative tranquility. The Blackdown Hills National Landscape Management Plan, which the Management Partnership is required by law to make, was endorsed by your Cabinet meeting in June last year. It is no longer in draft. And by Somerset Council, Mid-Devon District Council, and Devon County Council. Policy PL 17 of that plan says, quote, promote and protect tranquility and dark skies by minimizing intrusive noise, and so on. and this was drawn to your attention by the comments of the National Landscape Planning Officer in April 25 in her response to you. For clarity, this application is in the Blackdown Hills National Landscape, not in the East Devon National Landscape, as stated in papers for the committee. When the Countryside Commission, the predecessor of Natural England, assessed the Blackdown Hills in 1989, and it became an AONB as a result, they drew attention to, quote, an unspoilt rural character which remains undisturbed by modern development. Then in December 23, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, section 245, imposed on relevant authorities, that's you, me as a parish councillor, as well as the Blackdown Hills National Landscape itself, the duty to seek to further the purposes of a protected landscape. Mr. Justice Mould, in a recent case, it was a case to do with the New Forest National Park, has defined further as to promote, develop, move forward the purposes of the protected landscape. So I ask you, if you agree this application, in what ways is it promoting tranquility? How is it giving, quote, great weight, in the words of the National Planning Policy Framework, para 189, to the purposes of the national landscape? If you are minded to approve this application with mitigating requirements, I put it to you that no amount of mitigation will offset the disturbances of tranquility. I would also submit that the applications have shown no regard whatsoever for the restrictions that have previously been put in place. I urge you to reject this application and support your ward electors who live in, work and visit the Blackdown Hills. Its natural beauty, tranquility and dark skies make East Devon such a remarkable place and what it is. Its natural capital is as important now as it was in 1949. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next we have David Dow. You need to switch the microphone off and back on again because it's still timing. Thank you. It's off now, and as soon as you press it, you'll start.
Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The applications and the associated noise management plan are deeply flawed, and they give no guarantee of success. They lack transparency, and they try to hide the truth. Let me give you some prime examples. The stated aim is to vary the pattern of karting. This includes, but doesn't explain, other motorsports. What are they? Well, let me guess. Perhaps drag racing along the back of the raceway. Motocross scrambling in the adjacent woodland. Supercar events on the airfield runway. We don't know. How can we judge? It boasts of quieter karts due to new technology. Yet the noise limits are unchanged from 2010. Motorsport UK is, to date, unable to justify this claim. They claim the overall amount of noise will not increase. But surely, with more race days and up to 24 leisure karts on the track at once, the overall amount of noise must surely increase. There are dubious promises to reasonably control noise. What on earth does reasonably mean in this context? There's no explanation of how they will achieve this, and there are no targets to be met. They wish to encourage efficient driving to avoid tyre screech. Well, in my personal opinion, because I live nearby, that's wishful thinking. The church hour, a short silence on Sunday mornings cherished by many local residents, will be gone. And yet, at a meeting of Dunkeswell Parish Council, the raceway showed that they didn't even know the time of the local church services. Worst of all, the plan relies on self-policing by the raceway. The planning officer doesn't take the applicant's history and past behaviour into account. But I can, and knowing the raceway's history, I ask you, can they be trusted? We all know the council simply doesn't have enough time to police. So that's left to the raceway, self-policing by an operator who's clearly demonstrated his contempt for the council. More than 20 breaches since 2024. And a final thought, and I quote here from an email by your head of planning to the raceway after successive breaches and his previous advice to them being ignored. I can imagine his personal frustration. He said, "How can the council and the community trust that any revised restrictions would be adhered to when you don't comply with the current ones?" In summary, the noise management plan is weak, it won't work, and history shows the raceway will not adhere to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Karen Hill.
Chair, councillors, this development fills me with fear. For many years, I, like many others, have managed to bear life within a kilometre of the raceway. But these changes will break us. They are harmful, one-sided and cruel. On race days, the noise is relentless. The roar of engines revving, tyres screeching as cars tear around the track, a constant grinding assault on the senses, loud, aggressive. It's like a swarm of furious hornets trapped in a valley, amplified and unending. Of course, rural life is far from silent, planes overhead, farm machinery, but these sounds have a completely different character. They come and go and they're part of the landscape. They don't pierce your nerves like the screech and scream of kart racing, intrusive, exhausting, relentless. It eats into you and wears you down hour after hour. You wait desperately for it to stop, dreading it beginning again, and it does. You are forced to try to plan your life around it, but the noise changes with the wind. One day it might miss you, the next it's right inside your home. And if it's not you, it's someone else. Someone is always affected. I've seen the toll it takes, neighbours close to tears, standing in their gardens, pleading for the noise to stop. Others leave their homes when the racing starts, driven out. And consider those who are too frail to flee the noise. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. An extra 9 race days, 33 increasing to 42, means 27% more suffering, 67% more summer racing, when children playing in the garden can't hear each other without shouting, when we have to close our windows even on the hottest days, living like prisoners, more days when we have to say no to friends who want to visit. So how did Environmental Health conclude the noise was not intrusive? Because they failed to recognise the character and the psychological impact of that noise, and because, despite our pleadings, the recordings were taken at totally unrepresentative locations. And then there's the chemical pollution, completely absent in the planning officer's report. On some days you can actually taste it in the air and see it on the ponds. These plans mean huge increases in carbon emissions, roughly equivalent to the annual energy usage of nearly 14 UK households. Your own climate strategy says you are committed to reducing our carbon footprint and ensuring residents and business adopt similar aspirations. So please honour that commitment. Approval would mean you will break your pledge to the people of East Devon to safeguard the exceptional qualities of our district. Please deliver on your promise and reject them. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more objector, Peter Clark.
Councillors, having carried out what they call the planning balance, the planning officers concluded that the overall balance weighs marginally in favour of accepting these applications. Marginally. In other words, it was on a knife edge. They had serious doubts. I suggest to you that balance was made on the basis of incomplete and flawed evidence. So let's have a look at it. First, here are some of the officers' arguments supposedly in favour of the applications. The noise management plan will strengthen controls. No, it won't. It's self-regulation. It does not strengthen controls. It's wishful thinking. They say the 9 days increase is small. In terms of its effect on the benefits, yes, it is. The opportunities for youth development are there now. You don't need 9 more days to deliver that. Noise limits are unchanged. Thanks. The noise stays just as loud. 320 non-racing days left. Try telling someone who is suffering, don't worry, there are still 320 days when you won't be in pain. They say the noise isn't intrusive. Many people here change the way they live their lives. That's intrusive. A dripping tap is not a statutory noise nuisance, but it's used as a means of torture. Race sessions are shorter. It just means they will be more intense. It's a better balance in quiet periods. The noise management plan itself talks of providing respite. Their word, not mine. Respite, the relief from something unpleasant. What an admission to make. They claim benefits to tourism. The plan will bring, at best, less than 0.1% benefit to the tourist trade of East Devon. It is beyond negligible. And these are the benefits they raise. Weak, there's no other word. And now the officers' arguments against the applications, the ones they raised. I won't go into the ones they listed, just the ones they failed to include. 27% increase in harm to the quality of life. They refused in the document to use the word harm, and that's what it is. A 67% increase in racing in the summer months, an 80% increase in Sunday racing, when the tranquility is most valued by residents and by tourists. The negative impact on the several small local businesses that depend on tourism. An overseas tourist recently emailed me, I can no longer recommend the Blackdown Hills to my friends. Extra heavy traffic on already strained rural roads. The damage is costly and dangerous. And last, but certainly not least, the additional awful toxic pollution produced by two-stroke engines. They didn't even mention it. Councillors, none of these appeared in the planning balance, and I don't know why, but I do know, had they been included, as they should have, the balance would not be marginal. It would have tipped decisively in one direction, rejection. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just, or somebody who's nearby, switch the mic off? Thank you. Okay, we do have a couple of people to speak in favour, so we have Phil Wardman, please.
I'd just like to speak in support of the Dunkeswell Raceway. It's a positive role and it plays an important part in our surrounding area. This is it's not just a recreational facility, it's a community asset. It provides safe, structured and well-managed environment that people of all ages can take part in. Something exciting and active. In this time when so much entertainment is screen-based and having a venue that gets people outdoors learning new skills and engaging healthy competition is incredibly valuable. For young people especially, the track offers more than just fun. It helps build confidence, responsibility, focus and respect for safety rules. Motorsport at grassroots level teaches discipline and mechanical awareness, and it can even open up doors to future opportunities in engineering, mechanics and competitive racing. I also want to be transparent and say that I do work for the track, along with many other businesses in Dunkeswell and the local area. Because of that, I've seen firsthand the commitment to safety, professionalism and continuous improvement. The team works hard to minimise disruption, maintain high standards and ensure that visitors have a positive experience while being mindful of the local community. The track also benefits local economy. It brings visitors to the area who support nearby shops, cafes and businesses. It creates employment and helps keep money circulating within our community, rather than going elsewhere. Most importantly, it's a place where memories are made, birthday parties, friendly competitions, family outings. It adds to something unique to our area that many communities simply don't have. For all these reasons, I strongly believe that the racetrack is something we should value and support. It contributes to our community socially, economically and recreationally, and I hope it can continue for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have Rob Scurlock.
Chair and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd just like to start by highlighting just how lucky I think the South West is by having the facility and the fact that it's been managed to remain open, not just as an activity centre, but how it has continually been one of the most respected and well thought of kart tracks in the country. As many outdoor tracks have closed nationally over the years, a high percentage of those operating still struggle to hit numbers to remain viable. It is important to note that Dunkeswell finds itself in a very special position. It is fortunate to have the investment and focus of Sergei, who is resolute in developing a world-class karting and activity centre for Devon for families, children, schools, and of course those that take karting seriously, whether from Devon or beyond. Its classy development has earned the respect of UK karting governing bodies. This in turn provides an economic uplift to surrounding businesses when key championships arrive at the circuit. It continues to attract Europe's top kart teams, drivers, and since the new owner has been at his post, it has benefited from much needed investment. Site infrastructure, safety and sound measures are all important, and all important diversification, all of which has enhanced the image of the site for the local area and has made many local residents proud to be in its locality. Touching more on the diversification that's taken place, I can see it as being a deliberate effort to introduce activities that bring people of the community together in other ways. Laser tag and soon to be enclosed sim racing pods bring a balance of choice of quieter activities for people to consider. The sim racing is a fascinating investment. Hypothetically, people can be racing live head to head with someone on the other side of the globe and you wouldn't even know it was happening. Overall, all of the activities on the site are a cost-friendly solution to families, and it especially thrives as a provider of grassroots motorsport racing for those that can't afford higher financial commitment. Sergei's conscientious approach to the surrounding areas is a genuine effort to respect the residents of nearby villages, no matter how hard it can sometimes be to find the perfect balance as a business evolves positively. For me personally, I make the short travel route over the hills from Wellington regularly. I race with friends, we pop up for coffee, food, we eat at the restaurant, proving it is more than just petrol and engines to many people. My 10-year-old son is an enthusiast along with his friends. His teacher is so impressed by their commitment to the sport that they so much enjoy that this term they are planning an end-of-term trip for the school children. People at this site meet and retain new friends for many years through karting, sometimes generations at a time. As a customer, I look forward to seeing this establishment continue to raise the standards of community-based leisure activities as well as youth driver coaching in motorsport. And I wish it, along with Sergei and his team of staff, nothing but for the best for what looks to be a promising future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next we have Merrick Lewis, who is speaking on behalf of Sheldon Parish.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll make this quick because I know time is short. I'm going to confine myself to 3 key points. Most of them will be familiar to you, but the first one is the starting point is the development plan, and you determine this application in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. You know that well. The second point, and it follows on from this, is the decision is for you, the members of the committee, as elected members. You pay regard to your officer's advice, but you're not bound by it. And I'll come back to some comments on your officer's advice in just a second. Third and final point is, in my respectful submission, the balance of factors here combines to dictate a decision of refusal in this case. So starting with the development plan, in accordance with which the application should be determined, your development plan policies say, as a, for instance, countryside policies, that you do not approve development only permitted where it's in accordance with an explicit policy permitting it, or where development would not harm landscape amenity and environmental qualities of the locality. Clear breach of that policy. There is harm, that's acknowledged. There's noise harm here. Secondly, looking at the national landscape, you have to undertake development in a manner which is sympathetic to the quality and distinctiveness of the landscape. Goes back to the tranquility of the Black Downs national landscape. You don't permit things like raceway activity in it. You've got your noise policy. Unacceptable levels of noise won't be permitted. There's unacceptable levels of noise here. Moving on from the development plan, you've got material considerations indicating otherwise. Only 2 here, and it said that there's the improvement of the commercial viability, which your officer, Mr. Barrett, effectively dismissed, so that goes as a material consideration. The second one is tourism. Well, there's already tourists attracted to the existing facility. That's not a justification for more and more intrusive noise on top. As to your officer's judgment, with respect, they factor in these 2 material considerations, which should be left on one side, but they don't pay the great weight to the national landscape, which is what the NPPF says. And similarly, this is a major application. These Section 73 applications are applications for development in the countryside, other than in accordance with previous conditions. They have to be determined in accordance with the guidance in the NPPF, para 190. Major development is only permissible in exceptional circumstances. And that's not advanced here. I'm out of time. Final point to make is the Environmental Health Officer's judgment on lowest observed adverse effect level of noise. You've heard the speakers talk about the noise impact on them. In my respectful submission, that's unarguable. All of the balancing factors in my submission lead in favour of a decision against permitting this application, and ultimately that is a decision which is robust and defensible in the exercise of members' subjective judgment. Sorry, I've gone over. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. And finally, for speakers, we have Iestyn John. I think you know the score here. And he's speaking as agent for the applicants.
Thanks, Chair, Committee. We recognise that the proposals to change the operating arrangements at the raceway are subject of some sensitivity.
I do apologise. Councillor Hughes has left the room, so we need to just pause for a moment until he comes back.
Take a 5-minute comfort break in case anybody else wants to go.
Yes, I was going to consider doing that after speakers, but as Councillor Hughes has gone, does anybody else want a 5-minute comfort break? Okay, well, sorry, Iestyn, if we could just reconvene at 11:30, then we'll take a short break. I'm aware that members have been sitting for nearly an hour and a half, possibly longer. I should have said if anybody could avoid lobbying the members as they try and get to the toilet, that would be appreciated. And members, I would say the same to you. Right then, we'll reconvene. I think all the members are back. Honestly, you're taken back to my teaching days, Yehudi. Okay. Kay Yestin, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair Committee. We recognise that the proposal to change the operating arrangements at the raceway are the subject of some sensitivity. It is for this reason that my client has taken a very careful, fully evidenced approach worked up over a long period to assess what changes might be possible. Throughout the process, my client has engaged proactively with your noise, planning and legal officers, with numerous discussions having taken place since the first meeting with them was held in January 2024, well over 2 years ago. As part of the work, repeated noise assessments have been carried out, undertaken by my client's noise consultant, but using a methodology agreed with your officers and with results shared with them at every step. The proposed noise management plan, which details the proposed arrangements and controls, has been worked up in a similarly collaborative manner via a lengthy iterative process which has required no less than 10 drafts to be drawn up. The dialogue between my client and the council has been extensive and helpful. In coming to a recommendation for approval, your officer report provides a very detailed review of the proposed arrangements. However, I'd like to highlight a number of key points which hopefully provide more guidance on the nuance within the arrangements. First of all, the context is important. This is a long-standing business and karting operation, which is sited alongside an active airfield and a large business park. First. Secondly, of the additional race days requested, only one extra weekend day, either a Saturday or a Sunday, is proposed. The other additional days for race practicing, including at lower noise levels, would all be during the working week and therefore on the least sensitive days, and would finish earlier than current arrangements allow. As part of a quid pro quo, all weekend racing would also finish at an earlier time than is currently allowed. In the event that it is necessary to schedule successive race weekends, these are to be followed by an equal number of non-race weekends. This is to ensure that there is a balance in quiet periods to match race periods, and is also part of that quid pro quo. The raceway makes an important contribution to East Devon's visitor economy and supports a wide range of local businesses. The changes now proposed will help it continue to operate and become an established feature in UK motorsports. Given the amount of work done, the support now secured from the Council's own experts, we are confident the changes are acceptable and will not harm the amenity of local residents or the wider national landscape. The proposals include robust controls which the Council is able to rely upon and which the client is most willing to adhere to. And you've heard comments from the case officer, Mr. Barrett, on the merits of the noise management plan relative to the weaker merits of the current arrangements. Therefore, looking clearly and objectively at the proposals, there are no reasonable reasons to reject them, and I therefore request that you approve the scheme as per your officer's recommendation and those of your own noise experts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I understand the desire to applaud. I would appreciate it if you could not do it when the members start speaking, or show your disapproval of anything else they say. Right, okay. In that case, we are finally ready for questions. Colin, Councillor Brown, you had a question. Was it for one of the planning officers?
I've got 5 questions in total.
Right, got it. Fire away, Colin.
Do you want, right?
Yeah, you might as well do them all. We'll note them down.
It's 2 for Nigel, 1 for Sheldon Parish, the man who spoke on behalf of that. And,
yes.
And 2 for the agent.
Okay, I think we can do those. Yeah, if you could bring the microphone as close to you as you can, Colin, that'll make sure everybody can hear. And also, if you can kind of put the microphone in the direction you're going to be speaking. What happens in this chamber is that we have the microphone in one position and then everybody speaks in that direction because that's where they're addressing people. So we quite often get the microphone in one place and the speaker turned the other way. So if you can make sure it's... Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
Right,
5 questions.
But
on
Fernand,
the go.
where is the specific policy that supports this application in the local plan? It wasn't advertised as a departure from the plan, and if there's no specific policy, then it's contrary to Strategy 7 of the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. And also, if you go back to the original application in 05, the original application stated there were no traffic implications as there will be no increase in the maximum number of races or racers. So you didn't give a traffic survey then. Why haven't we asked for one this time when everything could be increased?
That's the 2 for Nigel, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll do it that
I
way.
think on the first issue, as I think as was made clear by one of the speakers, the development plan is the starting point for consideration, but we are also obliged to take into account other material considerations. I accept there's probably not a development plan policy that is explicitly related to a proposal of this nature. There are policies that deal with issues of landscape, noise, and the various contextual issues that we've been debating. But I would say that the debate has also raised issues that come under the bracket of other material considerations, which the decision maker is enabled to give whatever weight it ascribes to it in the planning balance alongside development plan considerations. I can't speak of the 2005 permission, I'm afraid. We haven't received, to my recollection, Highway Authority comments on the variation proposals. The Highway Authority do have access to all applications and will comment as and when they see fit. So it's implicit that not raising objections, we take their no comment as being a position of no objection. In terms of intensification, the number of leisure carts is being increased or proposed for increase. But in terms of race events, there's no proposed actual intensification of the use at any one specific event.
Sorry, Nigel, can I just say, when you talk about traffic and that, you never applied for it, so you wouldn't get an answer from Devon County.
Maybe I wasn't very clear in my last answer. They do have access to weekly consultation lists of every application that the authority receives. They will select the applications they wish to comment on, and where they've opted not to comment, we have to assume that they have no comment that they wish to make.
Mrs. Ormsby.
Sorry, my slightly defective microphone. Just adding to that, I think in terms of the local highway impacts, I think as has been mentioned, you've got the intensification proposal to increase the number of leisure carts from 12 to 24 per session. I don't think the Highway Authority would consider that is going to make any significant impact on traffic volume numbers in a way that's actually going to have any impact overall that they would want to comment on. And all of the remaining changes are not increasing the intensity of use at any particular time. It's just having a greater number of days on which these events are going to take place, or a longer extended hours. So if the amount of traffic is acceptable on a Saturday, for example, the amount of traffic would be acceptable on a Sunday. It's not going to have any greater impact on the highway capacity. So I think for that reason, we wouldn't have expected highways to have commented on this proposal, and neither would we have specifically consulted them on that. The question you were asking about specific policies, it's a very niche application in its own right. But of course, we do have policies that encourage recreational uses and acknowledge if they require a countryside location, it's very hard to have this type of use elsewhere. And we also do have policies that do support the expansion of existing employment sites in the countryside. So they're not necessarily directly targeted at this type of use because it is a more of an unusual use, but there is some general support for expansion of existing businesses within the rural countryside, and that's policy E7.
Yes, but we also have strategy 7, don't we?
We do, yes, which has been stated, development should not be permitted unless explicitly permitted by other policies, hence my reference to policy E7, which does specifically allow for expansion of existing employment businesses in the countryside, and also our policies that do specifically support recreational use in the countryside as well.
Okay, you also wanted to question one of the objectors.
I just wanted to ask whether Section 73 is the correct vehicle for this application, which it seems to be, because of the AR variation.
Well, that would be for our officers rather than one of the objectors to comment on, I would have thought, as they are the ones who...
Well, I thought we'd get free advice from a KC.
Yes, I kind of thought that the speaker had some, I thought perhaps he was a barrister. Yes. You spoke very well anyway, Mayrick. Yes, they all did indeed. Yes, so the query was to do whether this application was being submitted in the correct format. As a variation rather than a full application.
Because it's being increased to 100% for carts, for example. That is not a minor, and you can only use variation on 73 for minor, not major. I think, if something's 100% increase, it's major.
100% increase of what?
Well, the carts are going up from 12, leisure carts going up from 12 to 24. Is that major or a minor? 100% increase.
Well, I will let the officers comment on that one. I think major or minor perhaps depends on the scale of what we're talking about. We're talking about an increase in the number of carts, not the number of homes on a particular site. So I will let the officers comment on that one.
Before you, it is a different type of application for major VAR to a minor VAR. So are we doing it on the right one?
So I think the key thing here is that there's a section 96 application, which is a non-material amendment, non-material minor amendment. And then there's a section 73, which is an application to vary or discharge a planning condition. So section 73 is the correct vehicle because what is being sought is the variation of conditions. And that the implications of them may be minor, they may be significant, but there is no distinction between the application type in terms of whether you can apply to vary the condition on a major application or a minor application. And I think possibly where it is possible to perhaps confuses the difference between a non-material amendment, which is a different type of application, and this, which is a material change, and that is section 73. And so if you look at it, section 73 is Town and Country Planning Act, and it's the application to vary or discharge a condition. So I'm confident that this is an appropriate application type to consider the proposal before us.
Right, after these two, I will go away.
Right, you had a couple for the agent?
For the agent, yeah. One of the conditions is no amplifier, loudspeaker or public address system shall be used at any time. How are they going to control that when they're trying to control the races? How are they going to let people know what's going on? They're going to send texts, so everyone gives their phone number in, they send a text, or how's it going to be done? Is that one? And the other one is why, if I find it here, I've got it written down somewhere, why are they advertising a race meeting? I've got it, hang on, I've got it down there. Why are they advertising a race meeting on their website for an event that's happening the 18th and 19th of March, midweek on a Wednesday and Thursday, when they haven't got permission for it?
Sounds like we've got a...
It's one for the agent.
Yes.
Just in relation to the use of PAs, etc., the raceway use marshals, so they don't need PAs. You know, there are people on the ground, flags, etc. So they don't need sort of public address systems in order to organise things. In relation to your other point, I'm not just spoken to my client. I'm not aware of what you're talking. Sorry, I'm not aware of that scheduling of that event.
Perhaps I can help.
Hang on a moment, sorry. Hang on a moment. Hang on, sorry. And in any event, that is likely to be allowable under the current arrangement. I've just been spoken to one of my clients, and in the calendar it says that event is subject to change. So it's which is not unreasonable, I would suggest, given where we are today.
Does anybody wish to comment on this? Because
all I would say, Chair, is ultimately what they're advertising on their website is not a material planning consideration for your consideration today, so it's irrelevant.
well, that is correct, actually, and it could be that whatever permission is granted or refused today, that it's already going to be subject to enforcement. But we have to take the evidence that is in front of us in planning terms. Therefore, we will consider on the basis of what we've got. Okay, Colin, is that all your questions?
That's all the questions, yeah. I'll
good.
speak when I'm entitled to speak.
Yeah, of course. Councillor Levine, did you have some questions? Then I'll come to you, Ian. Haven't forgotten you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I've got lots, but unfortunately, I've just been slapped on the wrist by Mr. Freeman that things are not of material planning applications. I will just go for mistakes in the application by the officers. Perhaps they could correct me. It says here in the application that the leisure cars, there is a resident fleet of electric cars. On the website, they tell me that they've only got a fleet of 4-stroke petrol engine cars. When I ought to own up, when I went to talk to the race operators months ago, just after they submitted the application, they told me that electric cars was an aspiration because the technology wasn't quite good enough yet. They haven't got any electric cars, unless I know you know something better than me. The other problem that I have is it's to do with my nerdy mind. I've really got a warped mind. I used to be a professor of statistical physics in my previous existence. And one of the things that I used to do was looking at scientific instrumentation and how you process the information that they produce. And first, as a statistics, the way the report is written, it suggests that the race days are spread uniformly throughout the year, but they are not. They are peaked in the summer when there is people will come, where racing is convenient. So when you make a change by 1 day or 2 days, you are just making a change in one particular part of the year. So this figure of 3.29% increase is a misrepresentation because it assumes that the racing is throughout the year, but it isn't. The other problem that I have is that I don't believe that this, I'm convinced by officers that the noise management plan is preferable to Section 106. I don't believe it's enforceable. But one thing that I haven't seen, and perhaps it's a question to Mr. Winter, could you convince me that you can tell the difference between ordinary noise and the race, apart from noise levels? I haven't seen any evidence that you can tell the difference. So maybe somebody can convince me.
Okay, I think I'll ask Ian in a bit to comment on that one. Could you just summarise what your questions were, Yehudi?
My question were, are you sure that there's a resident fleet of electric cars? Is your analysis based on race days spread throughout the year, or do they recognize that there is a peak in the summer months? And the rest is for Ian. I've just...
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so the electric carts.
Based on the information that's been available to me, certainly my understanding has been that the fleet of leisure carts is 100% electric, based on the information I've been provided. No. Okay. All right. In terms of the seasonal, again, I'm not aware that the proposals say an awful lot about the kind of seasonal distribution of race events. I mean, it may well be that there are likely to be more race events during the spring, summer, early autumn period, potentially. But the proposed noise management plan builds in, as I mentioned in the presentation, an equivalent where there are successive race weekends at any time of year. They would be followed by the equivalent number of race events. In terms of the enforceability of the noise management plan, officers do believe, as again I outlined in the presentation, that there are adequate enforcement powers available, and also sanctions in the event of breach. In terms of noise, if I maybe may defer to Ian to address that point.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Ian.
address that point. In terms of noise levels in the village of Sheldon, you wouldn't get a particular noise spike or rise in frequencies from trackside noise. Often the trackside noise would be masked by other noises taking place in the acoustic environment, as for aviation noise, passing vehicles, people talking, horses going past, any other type of noise would basically mask the noise decibel levels in terms of what you'd actually see on a graph. For a noise investigation, we'd often do audio recordings, which we can enhance the noise levels, so we can actually then identify the carting noise in that respect. So we can identify noises if we're going to do an audio noise for the purposes of the village of Sheldon. However, the noise management plan aligns with the section 106 and particularly specifies noise levels trackside. This is a very different scenario because of the volume, the loudness of the noise. We can identify what the noise levels are of the vehicles. We can identify when races start, when they finish, any breaks, and any exceedances of the noise levels as they take place on the day.
Okay, thank you.
Could I come back, please, Chair?
If you have a
what
follow-up.
Mr. Winter said is perfectly correct, but the trouble is, it all based on noise levels. Somebody can very easily sabotage this noise level, come in with... You can't, the noise level is not sufficient signature of the racing. What we've got to have is a frequency distribution. The way I see it, as an expert in detectors, any self-respecting lawyer will be able to argue that the noise level, the increase in noise, if there is a breach in the noise level, that this noise is caused by extraneous factors. We need to have a signature of the racing in order to be able to prove that it is the racing and not extraneous background noise that has caused the breach. So I'm not...
Well, look, I think Ian said the measurements are taken at the track side, so there's unlikely to be anything else except carting noise, because any sound from spectators or anything like that is likely to be drowned out anyway. So I'm not sure. Do you want to comment on that, Ian?
Yeah, obviously there are various health and safety requirements trackside. The area which is point X on the track it's a no-go area for people during the event, when the events are taking place. The frequency spectrum as such, when you're looking at something, if someone started to interfere with a microphone, you would see it on the graph. And it's very, once you're used to looking at these things, it's very, you can identify what's racing, what isn't racing. You can even identify problem carts if there's one particular cart that's causing a problem. This is a noise condition that's been there since the dawn of the section 106. It's proposed for the noise management plan, and we have no problems with enforcement or the recommendations of these levels for the management plan.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Barlow. Yeah, I've got you.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions for officers, please. is it just the council who can challenge the 106 appeal in court? We say it's an expensive thing to do and complicated. Is it just us, or could the Sheldon Parish Council challenge it as well? That's the first question. And the second question is, it's really simple, really. Is it, on the noises for Mr. Winters, is it an annoyance for the residents of Sheldon, yes or no? And if it's not, why aren't they allowed to race all the time? You know, why is it in place if it is an annoyance for them? And I know you're going to say it's statutory, it doesn't get up to the right levels, but if it's not an annoyance, why are we having this? Why aren't they allowed to race every day? So it's a simple question. If it is an annoyance, I understand why we're here. But if it isn't an annoyance, what are we doing here?
I think just in answer to your first question, I'll look to the officers to correct me, but the S106 agreement, which I think is what you're talking about, is an agreement between the council and the racetrack operators. So as far as I can see, only we would be able to bring an injunction in terms of breach of those conditions, which is one of the points the officers were making, that the noise management plan, although much has been made of its unenforceability, is actually more enforceable because it's a planning condition, whereas the S106 agreement. Yeah, yeah. Well,
just wanted to
switch
check.
the microphone on, Damien.
Well,
if I'm-
No, someone's got theirs on.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah. To hold
I was just going to say,
Everybody's
just
got the same problem.
it's section 187B of the Town and Country Plan Act, and it just says where a local planning authority considers it's necessary or expedient for any actual or apprehended breach of planning control to be restrained by injunction, they may apply to the court for an injunction. So it's also.
Thank you, Chair, and
So it's
everyone.
only us. But the other question was about why isn't racing permitted? Or yeah, well, it could be they didn't ask for that, of course. But I'll ask the planning officers if they wish to comment on that one, or Ian. But I think
Obviously, there's an existing level of approved activity at the raceway. I think respectfully, it's not necessarily as black and white as, well, if they're allowed this level of racing, why shouldn't they be allowed 365 days a year racing? We have to consider what's been applied for, and again, as maybe I didn't explain in the presentation, our duty is to determine whether what is being proposed is an acceptable balance between the existing level of activity and what might otherwise be an unacceptable level of activity. I don't think it's necessarily a case that because they're allowed 33 days at the moment that they should necessarily be allowed 333 days. We are charged with considering the proposal before us, which includes a specific number of days and amendments to other provisions.
That's great.
Before you
That doesn't
pursue
answer
that
the
one
question.
further, Ian, can I just point out that this is not what is being applied for?
I'm well aware of what's being applied for, Chair. The question is really simple. Is it or is it not so I'm just trying to get to the point of the noise. You know, if there is nothing that is annoying, we are saying in Sheldon, this is a thing for Ian really, but if there is nothing annoying in Sheldon, what are we here to do? If it's not annoying, it's not annoying. If it is annoying and it is intrusive and it ruins someone's right to quiet enjoyment of their garden and their area, then I understand this. But if you're saying that it's not an issue and it's not a statutory noise nuisance, then why are we here?
I think Ian's going to say there's a difference between a statutory noise nuisance and what the council has sought to restrict in terms of the tranquility of the Blackdown Hills. But I'll leave it to Ian.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make. I think if it was as clear as it's not a nuisance, there's no problem with the activities taking place, then we wouldn't be sat here. We'd be allowing them to have karting every day of the year. I think it's clear from certainly the assessments that we undertook, there are times when we would consider it to be more annoying or the risk of adverse impact. So therefore, when we look at those points, we do need to then consider levels of mitigation to successfully mitigate it to a point where it then falls beneath the annoyance factor. So you may get, and that may include limited numbers of race days, keeping the introduction of quiet days, keeping the noise limits in the 106. So all the factors there to mitigate against, to reduce the level of annoyance as much as possible is there. But in terms of planning guidance, just because you can hear a noise doesn't mean that we should refuse the application. So it's marrying that up to the planning guidance to ensure that any noise that is there is managed effectively to a point then that it can still go ahead.
Thank you for that, Chair. Could I just ask one point on that? Has the law changed dramatically in the last 15 years to ease the changes in noise, etc.? So in other words, has it got? Are we allowed to have more noise now or less? Has it changed much over the last 15 years?
In terms of the statutory nuisance legislation, no, it's still the same, still the same level. In terms of the planning guidance, then there has been changes in the planning guidance with the noise policy statement for England and and the planning practice guidance for noise as well. So they do introduce the levels where you either have an adverse impact or a significantly adverse impact. And that's key for us in this stage, is that an adverse impact is allowable, but they need to mitigate against. A significant adverse impact should be avoided. And that's what we're trying to find here, is the balance is that there's no significantly adverse impact, but in this case we have identified times of adverse impact, therefore we need to mitigate against it, the introduction of the noise management plan.
Okay, Councillor Wragg, you had a question?
Yeah. Has there been any measurement, Ian, of the air pollution? That's one question. And the other one, it's been alleged by two of the speakers there were 20 breaches of conditions. Can you advise on that? Were environmental health aware of those?
In terms of the first one, for air pollution, from an environmental health perspective, we look at it in terms of residential amenity, and because there aren't any amenities that close to the racetrack, that there isn't any negative influence from the proposals. And in terms of the breaches, we are aware of the breaches, and we've monitored several of the breaches, but they're still in compliance with the levels with the 106. So they're more of a technical breach of the 106 rather than a breach in noise levels.
Okay, sorry, I have to ask you not to comment. Right, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Just a simple question. From what I gather, the intention, if this was to go ahead, would be for the track operators to police themselves. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. They are required. Yeah, they are required to comply with the noise management plan. The fact they've drawn that up and agreed it with our officers still makes it a condition which is enforceable. So the assertion that they are self-policing this is not correct. It can be enforced by our enforcement officers.
Thank you, Chair. Well, that hasn't explained very much at all.
Okay.
Yes and no to this, to a simple question, which is not, in my opinion, a reasonable answer. No offence. Now, the next thing I'd like to know is, physically, how do they do that? Are they supplied by Mr. Freeman's office with a sound monitor? Does Ian go up every time there's a race? where's the evidence that they're not breaching the rules that are put down by the 106 agreement with Mr. Freeman? How do we actually know? We don't. We just have to take their word for it. No offence to the operator. It seems very wishy-washy and flopping about. There's no definition of anything there, is there? I agree with Professor Yehudi, who knows a lot more about this than anybody else in this room. That's my question, Chair.
Okay, I will look to Mr. Winter to answer that one.
There are measures in the existing 106 and the noise management plan which do require monitoring every track event on site. Those noise levels or those monitoring results have to be maintained for a year, and they can be requested by the local authority at any point in that year as well. Sorry, I don't know who asked that question, but since the plan applications have come through, we've had every trackside noise measurement sent to us.
Does that answer your question, Brian? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Heath, John. I can't remember, is this your first meeting since, no, that's all right. I suddenly thought I haven't welcomed you to the committee, but I think we did that last time.
Just something I wish to raise. Under the National Institute for Deafness and Other Communicative Disorders, 85 decibels is considered loud, equivalent to heavy traffic, a blender or noisy restaurant. It is the threshold where, according to the National Institute for Deafness, prolonged exposure can cause permanent hearing damage. So it's bound by the definition to have an incredible impact upon residents living within a catchment area of the go-karting track. Thank you.
So are you asking if the noise levels would be sufficient to cause deafness? Okay, speaking as somebody who has hearing loss from having stood next to some very noisy drummers in my time, I can confirm that deafness can be caused by excessive noise levels, but I think Ian will tell you what those have to reach in order to
I empathise with you.
Damage. And something went off there. I know I'm a bit deaf, but there was a phone seemed to be interfering with the sound system actually, which was quite interesting. Okay, right, Ian, can you comment on noise levels and deafness?
Yes, if you were to stand 1 metre from the car as it was going full belt around the racetrack, then yes, there is a serious risk to your hearing. I believe the Health and Safety at Work Act has an action level of 80 decibels that you need to look at a workplace health and safety risk assessment or noise risk assessment, and you'd expect stewards and other people on site to be wearing suitable hearing protection. Which they do, and that's a separate matter under their own health and safety legislation. However, as you move further away from the noise source, the noise level reduces, and it reduces pretty much the double every time you double the distance. It reduces by 6 decibels. So yes, it may start at 85 decibels, but by the time you get to the village of Sheldon or any other way, you're down into the mid-30s, 40s. So same as a jet engine. If you're stood next to a jet engine, then you'll go deaf. If the jet engine's a mile away, then the sound level reduces the further away you get from it.
Can I come back just briefly on that? If you're within a catchment area of a jet descending, say into Heathrow, the noise is still going to be perverse and going to be invasive. And I would think that would be the same for something like that. I used to live in Bisley, and you on a Sunday you would hear the shooting from about 2 or 3 miles away, and it was intrusive. So I do understand where the residents are coming from in that sense. Thanks.
Yeah, although I'm a bit deaf, my wife is extremely not deaf, and she's very sensitive to all sounds. So I do understand, and I find the noise of jet skis annoying, with apologies to any jet skiers who may be present. But they're miles away from where I am, but I can still hear them, and they annoy me. But I don't think I could come to Ian and say this is a statutory noise nuisance, because he'd tell me the actual volume of the things is probably about 25 decibels. I do understand, and I do understand from the people of Sheldon how annoying it must be having these things going on. But we've got to remember that there is a difference between people describing the situation as it stands at the moment and what we're actually proposing here to consider. So we can't do anything, unfortunately, about the situation that exists at the moment. So the question for us is, does this increase that is being proposed through the variations, do we feel that's sufficient to kind of tip it over in the planning balance? Okay, Councillor Hunt, Steve.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just coming back on that, does this increase the levels of sound that we've got? To me, it seems that it's bound to, because if you're going to double the number of leisure carts, aren't you going to double the amount of noise that is emitted from them? And specifically, have our environmental health people managed to specifically monitor the noise coming from the leisure carts? Because if leisure carts are doubling, I think it's quite important that we should specifically have identified the noise coming from those. Thank you.
Yep, I'll ask Ian to comment on that, because are the leisure carts subject to a different noise level?
Yes, leisure carts have a lower noise level of 73 decibels over an LEAQ of 1 hour. The noise level proposed for the use of leisure carts hasn't increased, so it's staying maintained as the 106 agreement. Historically, we don't get noise complaints about leisure carts. It's the race carts that generate the noise complaints. And in preference to, decibels, where you have 12 carts, if you increase the cart numbers to 24, the increase in decibels is only 3 dB. So it's only 3 decibels, and that's the lowest perceived change in a decibel level that the human ear can actually perceive. So although it sounds like there's a lot of difference when we're going to increase from 12 to 24, the actual increased noise in decibels is going to be very minor.
Thank you for that. Good question, though. Councillor Bailey, did you have another question?
Yes, please, Ollie, if I may. It's for Ian again. Has Ian or any of his team actually stood in a resident's property garden inside a house when the race is taking place and monitored the sound decibels that are getting to them from the racetrack? Please.
Historically, yes, but not for this planning. For this planning occasions. For these planning occasions, we've used the churchyard in the village of Sheldon to take the noise measurements, which was central to the village where the majority of the noise complaints were generated from.
Okay. Right. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. We've got the Environmental Health Officer here, have we? Yeah. My question is to them. Can you, for clarity then, I know Councillor Ragg asked a similar question, but in my own mind, I'd like some clarity. How many complaints have you actually received over the last year or 2 years about the noise? How many visits did you make to ascertain whether there was a problem? And what was your outcome and any recommendations to the track organisers, please?
Okay, in terms of noise complaints, I don't have the record of noise complaints since the plan and applications were submitted. It's a lot of noise complaints, but we haven't detailed them for this. In the 4 years prior to the submitting of the plan and applications, so in 2020, 5 noise complaints were received. In 2021, 8 noise complaints were received. In 2022, 2 noise complaints were received. In 2023, no noise complaints were received. And in 2024, 5 noise complaints were received, sorry.
Answer that.
Yeah.
Very,
Okay,
very,
Colin.
very quickly. Those noise complaints were under the previous owner, Nigel Mansell. Do you know what the noise complaints are under the new owners?
Well, the noise complaints under the new owners were more for the breach of the 106, for the technical aspects, for the activities taking place on days that weren't permitted to be taken to.
You haven't enforced it either.
I'm going to bring in, sorry, Ed, Mr. Freeman to comment on this.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to comment additionally on this, because obviously the noise complaints in terms of a statutory noise nuisance go to environmental health. The breaches in terms of breaches of the Section 106 agreement come to my team in terms of planning enforcement. So there are 2 lots of complaints here. So obviously Ian's given the position from environmental health's perspective. From the planning perspective, certainly there were, I don't have the specific numbers, but there was a large number of complaints over the last year in terms of breaches of the Section 106 agreement, in terms of things like racing on Fridays, which is not currently permitted, increasing hours racing in the church hour that's been mentioned, and other complaints. A high number over the last year, much higher than any previous year. My understanding, and I think one of the speakers read out something that I'd actually written to the operators of the site, trying to get them to comply with the restrictions. I think one of the responses I got was that they had booked events preempting that they might get permission for this, and therefore that had then led to them being committed commercially to events that breached the 106 agreement. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but that was one of the reasons I was given. But certainly in answer to the question, a lot more breaches of the 106 agreement over the last year. No, we haven't taken action other than obviously communicating with the site owners and expressing on them the importance of complying with the 106 agreement and the consequences ultimately of not doing so. But while we had these applications in train, we needed to determine these applications first, because if approved, they may regularise much of that unauthorised activity. And that is in accordance with the Council's adopted enforcement plan, at least in my opinion. I know some of the residents disagree. But the enforcement plan does say that where we have an application that's seeking to regularise unauthorised activities, we will determine that application first before taking enforcement action. So that is why action hasn't been taken. Obviously, if the situation continues into this year and the committee is not minded to grant permission, then we'll need to review our position. And obviously, if permission is granted, we will need to enforce the new restrictions.
Yeah, indeed. Ian, did you have a...
Yeah, just on that point, Chair. So just think, obviously 106 is a legal agreement, no argument, cut and dry. If the council was to take the operator to court, should we not grant this permission, and should you decide to take legal action, if it did, are you allowed to get costs awarded against you, or is that something that always we have to cover the costs of that?
Yes, so I mean, Mr. Hunter might want to add to this, but my understanding is, yeah, as has been said earlier in the meeting, we would have to take out an injunction to take action, so that has potential cost implications on us in terms of legal action. We can seek to recover those costs if we're successful, but whether we would recover all of those costs, some of them, or any, is in the court's hands.
Okay, right, I think, have we finally had all the questions? Okay, in that case, we can move into debate and, well, of both the board members. So I'll start with you, Yehudi, and then I'll come to you, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, there's one fundamental difficulty with this whole application. And if I can summarize it, it is technology versus psychology. What is happening here is there is noise. And the instruments that Mr. Winter is going to put on the ground measure the level of noise. Now, this instrument is equivalent to our eardrum. Our eardrum gets exactly the same noise and it hears it. But there's a problem with our eardrum. Unfortunate, 100,000-year-old problem. The eardrum is connected to our brain. And our brain can distinguish between noises that we like and noises that we do not like. Our brain can distinguish between instruments of the orchestra. Our brain can tell us. This brain is the difference between what you measure and what our residents hear. There may be statutory level on noise levels, but they cannot measure the annoyance and the psychological disturbance to the residents. Now, this is not a planning consideration, but it is a consideration for the residents. And all the increase is going to make their life more miserable. The other thing that I've got a problem with the whole thing is enforcement, because there are two complaints. When I go to parish council meetings, I have constantly to deal with two complaints. One I can't do anything about, and that's potholes. The other one is enforcement. Residents and parish councils complain time and again that there is no enforcement. And I try and explain it simply because our officers are overwhelmed with enforcement notices. They simply cannot deal with everything. I believe that Councillor Barlow has asked the scrutiny committee to look into the whole question of enforcement. I just do not believe that we have the means to enforce the notice. Who is going to look at all the records? And that is the other problem. It is enforceable, and I think there is one way out of it. We've got to put in a condition that the raceway faces a £1,000 fine per day of breaches, regardless, and they pay it straight away. They can put some money in escrow for us, but they pay money for us in case of breach. Otherwise, I can't see how this whole thing is going to work.
Yeah.
For £5,000.
I'm afraid that's not within our gift, Yehudi.
But I'm not convinced that this, in principle, a noise management plan is enforceable, yes, but not in this case, simply because we're talking about instruments versus the feeling of the residents. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, why I cannot support officers' position.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Right, I'll try not to bore you. The residents of Sheldon are not trying to stop the kart club. They bought their houses knowing that the kart club was there. At the same time, they knew there was a S106 in place, restricting the use and protecting the OMB, in the same way that the new owners who recently purchased the site from Nigel Mansell knew there was a legal 106 in place. The 106 legal agreement was put into place after a High Court hearing at a cost of in excess of £60,000 to East Devon. It was to protect the residents and the AOMB from noise and unsocial use. The Clark Club have breached the 106 on numerous occasions, as you've heard, since the new owners have taken ownership. An email dated the 14th of August 2024 from Matt Blythe, Assistant Director of Environmental Health, stated the Trek had confirmed that they extended the race weekend on the 28th of the 6th, 24 to carry out proactive noise monitoring to provide data for a possible future planned applications. They stated that they had no intention to carry out further extended race weekends until the planning process was complete. Yet, carry on they did. And in 2025, there were 7 three-day meetings. Between the 24th of January and the 24th of March 2025, after several breaches, EDC Health and Planning officers contacted the raceway on 3 separate occasions to remind them of their obligation under the S106. The breaches continued. On the 19th of May 2025, after further breaches were reported to Ed Freeman, he wrote clearly that it was not acceptable that the track operators were not complying with their current restrictions. Mr. Freeman was given assurances by the raceway they would comply, but the breaches continued. Sounds a bit like a story, really, doesn't it? On the 21st of August 2025, after reporting further breaches, Mr. Freeman confirmed, I've raised this with the track and asked them to confirm by return they will keep their previous commitment to run only in compliance with the Section 106 agreement. He confirmed on the 15th of September 2025, I do have assurances in writing from the track operators they will adhere to the S106 agreement until the current application is resolved. The following weekend, they held a 3-day race meeting in breach of the S106. 23rd of October 2025, Ed Freeman admitted failure and wrote, while I have been clear with the operators that they do not have permission to race, they have stated that they intend to race both Saturday and Sunday this coming weekend. I have urged them to comply and reminded them of their commitments. And as I stated earlier, they've got advertised on their website on the 18th and 19th of March, which is a Wednesday and Thursday, a two-day event using 2-stroke carts, not the leisure carts, which are gas and not electric. Now they're asking to be rewarded for continually ignoring the S106. In 2015, a planning application approved the leisure carts to extend use on the track from 8 to no more than 12 to be used on the circuit at any time, with the reason given, the maximum of 12 being in the interest of the amenity of local residents and to help protect character of the OMB, an area of outstanding natural beauty. I've found 3 applications from similar activities in OMBs, all refused on appeal. The Kimbolton Kart Club, which held a certificate of lawfulness, limiting the meetings to 13 per year, being refused an extension. Really common, Crannock Chase, a new kart track in which the inspector said the potential harm to the green belt by reason of inappropriateness and other harm clearly outweighs other consideration. And at Poundgate Quarry, this case was related to noise intrusion from a police firing range and the retention of the facility. The application was refused on the grounds the impact of the proposal on amenity of existing residents and the impact of the proposal resulted in harm to the tranquility of open countryside. And we are being asked to approve this application on 4 different policies. Statutory 46, which says you should conserve and enhance landscape character of the area. EN 14, control of pollution. Permission will not be granted for development which will result in unacceptable levels, either to residents or the wider environment, of pollution of the atmosphere by gas particles, including smell, fumes, dust, grit, smoke and soot. Leisure carts are gas, race carts are 2-stroke. Both produce toxins. D1, design and local distinctiveness. Proposals shall have regard to local proposal policies, including neighbourhood plans. Right. And the Dunkerswell Neighbourhood Plan, NE1, development should demonstrate that there will be no significant adverse impacts on the natural environment and its tranquility. And paragraph 3.4 of the Dunkeswell Neighbourhood Plan says, preventing both new and existing development from contributing to unnecessary levels of soil, water, air and noise pollution. Now, we can refuse on all those that have been put down for recommendation, but I would also like to add to it strategy 7. Development in the countryside will only be permitted where it is in accordance with the Pacific Local or Neighbourhood Policy Plan. That explicitly permits such development where it would not harm the distinctive landscape, amenity and environmental qualities which is located. So when you're ready for a proposal, if you would like me to make one, I will make one, or well, wait for what you have to say, Chair.
I'll come to you in a minute, Colin.
Let's speak at some point.
Yep. Do we have anyone else wishing to? Ian. Steve, is that hand up as well? No.
Thank you, Chair. I can argue both ways, usually, with most things, as you know, and I always like to argue at the other side. But I think it's very difficult on this one. You know, we have been to a court previously. We've spent a lot of time and effort to make something that is acceptable. And if it was enforced, that would be a good thing. That was 14 years ago. Have things moved on? We've heard from our environmental health officer that the law on noise has not. And we've heard also that just because it isn't a statutory noise doesn't mean it isn't annoying. So the people have bought their houses, as we've also heard, knowing that the racetrack is there. The racetrack has known that the restrictions are there when they've bought it, again, very recently. And I just wonder, you know, planning is all about opinion and us sitting here trying to find the balance between different things. Laws are usually different. 106 is very clearly laid out exactly what you're allowed to do and what you're not. And it should be really easy to defend and ask for costs against it, I would imagine. For the simple reason, it's not, if they're doing something that is against the 106 legal agreement written up in front of barristers and a judge, whatever, then at the end of the day, you're either not doing it or you are doing it. So it should be really easy to go to court and say, no, nothing is ever simple when it involves solicitors, barristers, the courts, or the council for that matter. But again, you know, this is something that at the end of the day, we need to do. And it doesn't matter whether it's our enforcement of our planning things through our own enforcement officers or the court. You've just got to do it. And if you don't do it, no one takes any notice of it. What's the point in making rules? So we have these in place already. Unless you are saying that the people have got DEFA and therefore it doesn't matter as much. I just, do you know what? I looked at this and I've struggled to try and find a balance to argue both sides of it for the last week and a half when I've been reading it. And I've come here today with an open mind to try and listen to everything. I've heard nothing here today that actually makes me think that the officer's recommendation is a good one. And again, I will wait to hear what Colin is going to suggest, but certainly I do not feel that I can support this as it is at the present time, because although there are things in there where I think the noise management plan would be a good thing to bring in, I think they ought to bring it in now on the basis of what we already have on the 106. And let's see if they work well with the local community. They work well with our environmental health officers, but we don't need to take that security of the 106, what has already been agreed, away, in my opinion. As for doubling carts, you know, I think some of these things, if you can prove that they're not going to be a noise, I just think it is increasing the weekends, especially as we've heard. This is concentrated in the summer. And if it's in the winter when you've got your windows shut and you're inside, it wouldn't be as much annoying. Whereas if you actually want to enjoy your garden, your right to enjoy your house, etc., I think the benefits of you know, the economy, we've been told by the government we've got to look at that now, or they're suggesting we've got to look at that now. But again, is there a huge benefit to our local community with this? with all the other things going, as I said, I will wait to hear what Colin says, but I cannot at the present time support officers in this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bailey. Brian. Oh, sorry, Eileen.
Beg your pardon, ladies first.
I have, no,
I was on there.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just, I can come in after the members. I just wanted to start with general, get a bit of
Yeah.
advice about.
Yeah,
the,
I think that would be a good idea. Okay, Eileen.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Well, I've done a little bit of research, and the average traffic noise is between 53 and 79 decibels. The acceptable noise pollution or noise in a residential area is 50 to 60 decibels. Now, what Councillor Yehudi Levine said rang a bell with me. It does come down to what's a noise that is, or a sound that's pleasant, or a noise that is irritating. And it reminds me of an application that we had about 3 or 4 years ago now, and it was for a shot blasting. Some of you might remember it. And the committee, despite all the environmental health statistics, and it was a very thorough piece of work, despite all the information that they brought forward, scientific information, the committee had representations from certainly 2 residents, elderly people who'd gone to the area to retire, and spoke vociferously against the application. The application was refused, which I have to say I couldn't support. I voted in favour of the application. The Chief Planning Officer, not Mr. Freeman, the one above him, who's no longer with the authority, sent the application back to committee for reconsideration. The committee then decided they'd go have a site visit. We went on the site visit. We stood just a few metres from the hut where the shot blasting was in full swing, and the only sound that we could hear was birdsong. And so the application was approved. So I think it comes down to what is an irritating sound, as Councillor Levine has said, what is tolerable and what is not. And as Councillor Barlow has said, the residents bought their properties knowing that this facility was close by. It's been there for years and years. And whether there's been an increase in the noise levels, or, you know, if there's been breaches, that's for planning enforcement. But I have every confidence, certainly in environmental health, they do a very thorough job. And I think in this instance, I can understand how irritating it must be for residents. But in this one, I came here with a totally open mind today, and I've listened to it, and I've gone on information that I've been able to dig out. And the officers have gone, they've cited a legal case in here, it's on page 38. And that has swayed certainly their reason for the recommendation. And in this instance, I think I'm going to have to support the officers in approving this. If we refuse it, you know, no doubt the applicant will go to appeal. And who knows what might come of that. We really don't know, but based on, certainly on the evidence, I really am swayed to support the application.
Thank you, Eileen. And as one of those who supported the refusal of that previous one. I'm duly embarrassed.
Oh, sorry.
No, I led the charge on that one. But unfortunately, I couldn't go on the site inspection, so I managed to be away for the actual resolution to approve. Yeah, Brian, Councillor Bailey.
Well, I, like Eileen and everyone of this committee, have come here with an open mind. And I've studied this for a number of weeks. And looking at what I've seen on our computers and listening to what's been said by everyone in this room, I find it very difficult to accept in my mind that the officers are recommending approval. And I shall endeavour to tell you why. No pun intended, the track record for this operator is far from perfect. 20 breaches. That's a hell of a lot. And I'm surprised that Mr. Freeman can sleep at night with all this pressure coming on him. This agreement was done many moons ago in good faith, and it's not been adhered to. And now we're expected to hear from the officers that, oh, it's all right, they'll self-police it. Don't you worry, we can trust them. Well, looking at what's been before me and what I've heard today, I personally would find it very difficult to trust them with anything. And that's my personal opinion, no offence to anyone. So I'm totally against it, and I would like to keep the original 106 agreement in place. Because if that goes, we've got no control whatsoever. And we should have control. We are the authority, and we should make sure that applicants apply and keep to the letter of the law on the 106 agreements. And I wish to support Mr. Freeman, who I know is of open mind, but if he was to go one way or the other, I would say support Mr. Freeman and put these agreements in place, and if they're breached again, take legal action. And that's my opinion, so I'm totally against this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Could you just switch your microphone off? Right, I've got a couple of officers wishing to come in at this point, and I can't see any more hands up. So I'll go to Damien, Mr. Hunter first, our legal advisor.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it might be a good opportunity just to explain my understanding of things to members, hopefully provide a little bit of clarity. I know there's quite a bit of talk about the applicants self-policing themselves. At the end of the day, they've entered into or agreed to enter into a noise management plan. That's, in that sense, they're self-policing themselves in that they're putting forward these proposals to us for our agreement. They've now been agreed by Environmental Health that they would be acceptable. If they then breach the noise management plan, which will be covered by a condition, we can immediately take enforcement action for a breach of that noise management plan. We can then serve a breach of condition notice, and then if they fail to comply with that, we can then immediately prosecute them. At the moment, the situation that we've got is we've got quite an old and, somewhat clumsy Section 106 agreement now in place in order to take action to be able to enforce and take action in respect to any breach of the Section 106 agreement. As Mr. Freeman's pointed out, and various people, we would have to issue injunctive proceedings. Now, if we've got scenarios which we've had on quite a few occasions where I've been told somebody's complained that this has been breached and they've gone over by 5 minutes, they've gone over by 10 minutes, and there seems to be quite a lack of evidence actually of anybody being there on site witnessing this. It's just somebody sat in their home saying that they've heard a noise. Incredibly difficult to then be able to go and take injunctive action and try and convince a court that it's expedient and it's in the public interest to go to apply for an injunction for a breach of 5 or 10 minutes. We would need a consistent amount of breaches of that level to be able to go and get an injunction. And my view is that it is possible to do that if we get that evidence, but it's much better to be in a situation whereby we can have a condition with a noise management plan in place, that if then there is a breach and any of the people who live nearby hear that breach and report it to the environmental health officers, and they can then go out and they can monitor it as well. We're in a much stronger position then to be able to take enforcement action quickly and then to try and take enforcement action by going to court rather than to try and get an injunction at the High Court. So I think the way that officers are proposing to deal with this is much more sensible way than we've got at the moment, and a much more practical way. That's something, as the solicitor here, something I can actually deal with rather than be asked to take injunctive action for a breach of a few minutes. It just won't fly with the judges. It just won't. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Freeman, did you? Sorry, I will come to you, Colin. But Mr. Freeman, did you want to come in as well?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr Hunter said some of the things I was going to say. A couple of things to add. One is, I think a couple of speakers have sort of said about the operator's track record of breaching the existing obligations within the Section 106 agreement over the operation of racing at the track. I understand why that's being raised, and I understand the concerns that raises in terms of trust as to whether or not the operators would comply with any new restrictions. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's not a material planning consideration of this application. You can't refuse planning permission on the basis you don't trust the applicants to comply with the new restrictions that would be put in place. So I must caution the committee against giving any weight to those issues. The other thing to say is that the enforcement powers are there. You know, we haven't taken action because we had these applications in, and those needed to be determined first, fundamentally. But the enforcement issue arises whether you grant permission for these applications today or not. It's just which restrictions are we enforcing and how. So in terms of Councillor Levine's point about the resourcing of that and our capacity, yes, those issues exist. Whether you grant permission today or not, those issues will still exist. So I don't see that that is material to whether or not you grant permission today or not. We will need to have the resources to take any appropriate enforcement action and enforce the requirements, whether they are the new requirements in the report before you today or the existing ones within the Section 106 agreement. We will have to deal with those issues. So I just urge against influencing your decision today based on those issues, because they're not material. The issues that are material are those that are set out in the report before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for that reality check. Councillor Gazzard, did you? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. In my mind, this application and what the applicant is asking for, in my mind, it's excessive. And I don't think it's fair that residents should be even more traumatised than what they are at the moment. Mr. Freeman's just talked about breaches. And yeah, I'm concerned about the number of breaches that have been done. But I am not convinced that by removing an S106 agreement that the applicant will actually do what he's supposed to do, because it comes down to monitoring. And it's quite clear from what's been said by Mr. Freeman that complaints haven't been monitored. And I've got concerns and that they're not going to be monitored because we haven't got the officers to do the job. I'm also concerned about, here we are at East Devon, we've imposed or taken on a climate emergency plan, and here we are now talking about putting even more fumes into the atmosphere and into residents' houses. So I think this application is totally unacceptable, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Councillor Brown, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, all I was going to say, Damien was speaking of, 10 and 15-minute breaks, and we can't do anything about that. We're not talking about short-term breaks. We're talking about days on end where they break the 106. They break an agreement. They say they're not going to. We're going to do so-and-so. No, we'll abide by it. There's letters been sent in, and I've got copies of the letters sent in saying they will abide by it. And next day, something totally different. So it's not a 10-minute break or 15-minute break, it's days break. It's days on end when they do things wrong.
Thank you. I will keep reminding the committee what Mr. Freeman just said, that past transgressions should not influence us today. While you might feel in a common sense way they should, we have to remember that when we consider an application, we should actually be blind to the applicant and not be swayed by who they are at all.
No, I'm being swayed by the planning policy.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Levine, then I'll come to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me that there is a big issue here. Section 106 on noise management plan. I'm very happy with the noise management plan if it is on the same basis as the section 106. Why do we need to increase it? We can just replace one with the other. Why not?
No, that could be one of the variations. Well, I think it is one of the variations. It's just there are other variations here. Yes.
No, but they're increasing the
but-
operation. Without
yes.
the increase in operation, replace one.
Yeah. Yes, yes, well, yeah, exactly. We have to consider that in terms of the application. So, yeah, that is part of it. Councillor Barlow.
Very quickly, Chair, I don't want to go on this point, but again, when we're talking about an injunction and arguing a point, we're not interested in 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't matter whether we believe what they say or not. That is irrelevant. We don't. But it's really easy if it's days or large periods of time to say a three-day race weekend isn't allowed if they do it now. It's a really simple injunction, because at the end of the day, that's against the law of what has been agreed. And I think it does go down to what Yehudi says. You are asking to increase by 27% the amount of race days. And at the end of the day, if that wasn't acceptable 14 years ago, what has changed in the last 14 years? Are there less people living there? Is there a huge amount of gain to either the environment or the employment or the economy of the area that would justify, however much it isn't a statutory annoyance, the annoyance that is given to the people that live in that area? And that's what it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned. So are you ready now for someone to make a motion?
I think we are. I think everybody's spoken enough. So, Colin, you were going to make a proposal, and I'll come to you, Ian.
Sorry, that's better. That this application should be refused, and we'll just pick on one policy because we've been told that one policy is sufficient, and that is Strategy 7, Development in the Countryside.
Okay.
And do you want me to read that one out to you?
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll get Mr. Hunter to come to you. And firstly, we'll find out if we have or perhaps we should ask you for your reasons first. Other than, do you have any others other than Strategy 7?
I can put loads, but I mean, Damien always says one strong one is
Okay,
better than
one
10
strong
weak
one.
ones.
So which aspect
Strategy 7
of Strategy 7 do you feel is being breached? Or that is against it?
Well, the countryside is defined by all those parts of the plan shown in a built-up area boundary outside a specific location and proposal. Development in the countryside will only be permitted where it's in accordance with local or neighbourhood plan policy, which this one is not. It's against Dunkerswell local plan.
Yeah, we're talking about a variation today, Colin. We're not deciding on whether the racetrack should be there or not.
No, but it's
we
like
are
a new
looking at
planning
an
application, this.
extension and a variation of the conditions. So I'm struggling to see which aspect of Strategy 7.
Well, it's against the Dunkerswell neighbourhood plan to start with, and the Dunkerswell neighbourhood plan which I've got written down here somewhere. Paragraph 3.4, prevent both new and existing development, and this is the development really, because they're increasing the card, so it's a development of some form, from contributing to unacceptable levels of soil, water, air, or noise pollution.
Okay. You wanted to...
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think we're starting at policies, whereas personally I would start at what harm you're concerned would arise from this development, and then perhaps as officers we can advise which policies would be relevant in terms of that. I'm not putting words into your mouths, but the harm I've heard discussed through the discussion was about the impact of noise on the amenity of residents. Despite the advice of environmental health, you're concerned that the tone and pitch and frequency of the noise is causing harm to residential amenity, accepting that it's not a statutory noise nuisance. The other issue, which I haven't heard much debate about, but the other main issue I think was touched on, was impact on the tranquility of the national landscape. So I would have thought those were the two main issues. Those relate to policies around predominantly the national landscape and noise impact on residents. I don't have the policies to hand. Don't know if colleagues do. Strategy 46 is landscape conservation enhancement and areas of outstanding natural beauty. Obviously there's the requirement to further the purposes of the national landscape that's set in legislation as well. So those, and EN14 is control of pollution in the local plan. Policy D1, design and local distinctiveness, also refers to noise issues. And then obviously you made reference to policies in Dunkeswell neighbourhood plan. I'm sorry, I don't know the policy references, but if I would have thought from what I've heard, those would be the policies and the issues that you've highlighted that are of concern to the committee.
Thank you very much for filling that bit out for me, Ed. So,
we're proposing refusal on the grounds outlined by.
I would stress that those reasons are not my views. They
No,
are
no,
summary
I
of what I've
understand
heard
that
from
you're
members.
just pointing out which policies might be relevant to a refusal. Ian, I think you were inclined to second, but
I would like to say this. I would like to thank Mr. Freeman for his excellent summary of the problem.
okay. So that's seconded by Councillor Levine. So in that case, members, if everybody's ready, we'll go to a vote.
Can we get Mr. Freeman to clarify and read out the reasons again? So
Yes.
everyone knows exactly what they want.
Yeah. If Mr. Freeman, yeah. So we had. Yeah.
So my understanding is members are concerned that the proposals, and I should stress, I think these are reasons across presumably all of the applications before you, because I think there's 4 applications, isn't there? Perhaps Mr. Hunter would like to advise whether you wish to vote on all of them together or independently. I think. Okay.
If we're going for a recommendation of refusal, let's take a vote on that, see if it stands or falls.
Yeah, we can use delegated authority to craft the actual, to ensure it's those reasons, but that the wording is relevant to the individual applications if members are content with that. My understanding is that the 2 reasons would be, firstly, that the development would have a detrimental impact on the amenity of residents in the nearby village of Sheldon, in terms of issues such as the noise and frequency of noise, impacting on amenity contrary to the requirements of policy EN14, control of pollution, policy DE1, design and local distinctiveness of the adopted local plan. And we'll have to check the references, but the relevant policies are the Dunkeswell neighbourhood plan. And then the second reason would relate to the impact of noise on tranquility of the national landscape, arguing that it would be detrimental to its tranquility and would not further the purposes of the national landscape as required by legislation, contrary to the requirements of Strategy 46, landscape conservation and enhancement and areas of outstanding natural beauty in the adopted local plan. I'm not sure if there are relevant policies in the Dunkeswell neighbourhood plan. Oh, I'm being policy NE1 of the Dunkeswell neighbourhood plan. And obviously I suggest we ought to refer to the National Planning Policy Framework and the relevant policies of the draft East Devon local plan as well. So on that basis, I would ask members to give delegated authority if they're so minded for us to word the detailed wording, but based on those words.
Okay, so hopefully you all understood that, Mr. Freeman has outlined potential strategies and policies that we can identify, and he and other officers will work on the exact reasons for refusal under their delegated powers. So, with that in mind, then we can go to a vote. All in favour of refusal, just to be clear. So yeah, I get 10. Any against refusal and abstentions? Myself and the...
So do we have any against?
No.
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 Abstentions?
Two abstentions, just myself and the Vice Chair, just to keep our powder dry. So that one is carried.
Yeah, that will add up. But what we do have 3 abstentions, don't we? Because Councillor...
Councillor Chapman abstained, yeah. Okay, right, if Mr. Gigg is still here, thank you for your patience, Malcolm. We will go on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 10 we can defer to the afternoon, but as the agent is here, I think we should consider agenda item 9 before lunch, which is Rosamond Farm, Perkins Village. So do you want to take 5 before we consider that one? I think we will, to allow everybody to get out of the chamber as well.
I just have to hold the whole time.
Right, can I call everybody to order, please? Because we all want our lunch, but as the agent is here, I think we should consider agenda item 9 before lunch. Can I just check everybody's back? Is Maddie coming back? She's gone. Okay. Yeah. In that case, we're all back. We've got all our officers.
Yeah, we're all here.
Yep. Okay. So I will go to Jill Hemsworth, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report. This is Rosamond Farm, Perkins Village. This is application number 250368 MFUL, and it's pages 69 to 107 in your agenda pack. Over to you, Jill.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Amanda just needs to get the slides up.
Okay, do we have the slides?
Can we have the slides, please? The same one.
Thank you. So this application is in Perkins Village. The application is before the Planning Committee because the officer recommendation of refusal is in conflict with comments received from the Parish Council. So this is the application site here. The application site is enclosed in the red line, and the application building is this long existing farm building you can see on the plan there. So the farm buildings had Class Q consent. The access to the site is down here through a newly created access, and since this aerial photo was taken, a new access road has been constructed across the bottom of this site. There's a mature hedgerow to the north of the site and along the eastern boundary of the site. So the site benefited from a consent to turn the existing agricultural buildings into 5 dwellings. So that application expired on the 13th of February, so last week. The existing buildings are long and narrow, and the previous conversion was allowed for 5 dwellings with a total built area of 395 square metres. So the relevant case law is Mansell versus Tonbridge and Marling, BC, which stated that the fallback permission, such as this, is a material consideration. However, that's only a material consideration where there is a realistic prospect of a conversion, and the Class Q consent has now expired. Therefore, the local planning authority do not consider that the conversion is realistic. The site is not within any built-up area boundary, and there's no policy that would allow for open market housing within a site such as this. The application does also need to be considered in the context of the presumption in favour of sustainable development, however. So this is the existing building. So obviously, since the previous Class Q application was consented, 3 years have gone by. The building has been open to the elements in that time. There's been significant deterioration of the structure, and the local planning authority have not been given any evidence that the buildings would still be capable of conversion. And in addition to that, since the application was approved, any application coming forward would also have to comply with space standards, which the previous application did not do in terms of minimum built area and also in terms of ceiling heights. And the existing eaves heights are very low for the agricultural building. And there's another photo of the building showing the kind of overgrown nature and the kind of deterioration to the structure. So in terms of the proposed scheme, the application looks to demolish the existing building and replace this with 4 detached dwellings. The existing built form within the hamlet tends to be kind of long, thin buildings, either perpendicular or parallel to the road, whereas the proposal is a relatively contrived arrangement with buildings set at 45-degree angles around a loose courtyard. The proposal would allow for a large increase in built area from 395 square metres of residential accommodation in the Class Q scheme to this scheme, which has 532 square metres of accommodation across the 4 dwellings. And the proposal also allows for a huge increase in the red line site area from 3,600 square metres in the previous scheme to 12,600 square metres within this scheme. And in the absence of a Class Q fallback position, there is no fallback for such a large increase in built accommodation or for the site area boundary. So the dwellings themselves are single-storey, duo-pitched roofs with slate roofs, timber cladding, and one of the buildings is rendered. So the materials are considered appropriate for the area. That's plot 2, plot 3. You can see that there's significant glazing to the end gable elevations. And plot 4. So there's a kind of continuity of style across the dwellings. And there's some 3D renderings of the scheme showing the dwellings. So that's a street view image, so showing the existing building in the context of the kind of rural location. So it's a very long, low building. It sits neatly in the landscape, and the colours are relatively recessive. So in contrast, the proposed form would be much taller. It would have significant glazing, and the form and scale of the development would be contrary to guidelines contained within the landscape character assessment. And the proposal would therefore be contrary to local plan policy D1 and to NPPF paragraph 135. In terms of BNG, EDDC's ecologists have objected to the scheme on the grounds that there's no clear management for the site hedges going forward. These have been recorded as retained within the metric. However, the hedges would be in private gardens and therefore would be lost in terms of the ecology, owing to the degradation that would occur with the hedges being in private gardens rather than being maintained with an eye on ecology. whilst this is not a matter for refusal, it could be dealt with post-permission. It's a matter that hasn't been resolved during the application. The existing barn is a day roost for common pipistrelle and soprano pipistrelle bats, and therefore a licence would be required. In terms of drainage, the site is in flood zone 1, but there are known surface water issues. Therefore, a drainage scheme has been drawn up. Devon County Council flood officers have stated that this is acceptable, subject to a condition requiring detailed drainage design prior to construction. There's the existing access, which was previously consented under application 221471. County highways have no objection in terms of the proposal. However, in terms of the location, the site is outside the built-up area boundary. There are no services or facilities within Perkins Village. The site access is via narrow, unclassified roads. There are no pavements or street lighting. Therefore, residents would be reliant on travel by car to access services and facilities, which would be contrary to Strategy 3, Policy Strategy 5B, and Policy TC2 of the local plan. So in terms of the positive aspects of the proposal would contribute 4 detached bungalows to the housing supply, and there are no objections from highways. In terms of the negative impacts, there's no fallback position from the previous Class Q, which has now expired, and it's not been demonstrated that another application for a Class Q would be successful given the deterioration to the building and the change in legislation in terms of minimum space standards. The proposal would lead to harm to character and appearance of the countryside through the suburban character and through large expanses of glazing in the design. The site is unsustainably located, and there's no material consideration on which to base a departure from the local plan. And on this basis, the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons stated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jill. Okay, call on the agent, Malcolm Gigg. Thank you for your patience, Malcolm. It's been a long morning.
Chairman, thank you for allowing me to talk before you today. The executive summary has advised that the officers do not feel that the fallback is appropriate due to the Q class expiring on the 13th of February. However, it does not explain that the original application was validated on the 26th of March 2025, this making the application legally allowed to use the fallback. And the reasons for the delay was the change in officers during the application. Our clients have provided ecology, B&G, drainage details required all within the timeframes of the application. We've therefore strongly disagree with the officers' comments on this matter and would ask that the committee to take this into account, that the application was valid and complete prior to the 13th of February, therefore making the fallback active and legal. Further to this, the officers' report questions the approved Q class means that the national minimum standards, space standards, were not met. However, the approval was granted by East Devon District Council under the permitted development right, and there was no issue at time of the approval was raised. The fact is that the approval means that the permission has the right to progress the fallback option. The officers' report further states that the site area is 3.5 times that of the original Q class approval. A Q class permission allows for the same floor area to be provided externally for amenity as the internal floor area of the permitted barns. The fallback allows for a much nicer and more open scheme to be developed to provide habitable living space for properties. East Devon District Council planning approved under planning reference 231556 Egremont Barns a fallback that was 4.3 times larger than the original Q class permission and praised us for the open nature of the design, creating an enhanced living space for residents. The barns designs are also very similar to this application before you, and again they praised the agricultural barn feel to the designs, allowing light into the living spaces through glazing. Currently, East Devon has a lack of housing supply. The approval of this scheme would both provide housing for the local people, and the most important part is that 2 of the properties would be used by the children for the farm who currently work within the farm and therefore would live adjacent and within the community which they've grown up in. And therefore the proposals would provide towards the numbers required by East Devon District Council. The report is attempting to paint a negative picture of the proposals and legality of the fallback. The fact is that the development size is comparable to other schemes approved by East Devon planners, and the use of the fallback is in line with the requirements. In conclusion, we do not support the officer's recommendation for refusal for this application and ask the committee to look at the timeline of the application and the legality that the application was validated while the Q class was valid. It's important to state that the application has parish support, highway support, Devon County flood support, South West Water, Natural England, tree officer, ecology officer and environmental health, and there have been no other third-party representations. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We also have a statement from the ward member, Councillor Jess Bailey, which Amanda is going to read out.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement from Councillor Bailey. I would like to apologise for my absence due to the Planning Committee meeting clashing with Devon County Council's formal Budget Committee meeting. She has the following comments on this application, which is, I support the officer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Gosh, that was uncharacteristically. Oh, okay. Okay, we can move on to questions then. Councillor Gazard, I think I saw your hand up just a fraction earlier. So I'll come to you after Steve.
Just on the question that was asked us now about the legality, could you just clarify that for me then, about the application?
Is that one for you, Damien, or for the planning officers? Yep.
So the previous Class Q application expired on the 13th of February. So, and unlike a planning application, a prior approval application requires the development to become complete by the 13th of February. I don't know whether the application, I presume the applicant has not made a material start. They were also required to make an R77 application to Natural England prior to starting in respect of the habitat regulations, and no such application has been received. So there is no fallback. The application has expired.
Okay. Ian,
on the same
Councillor
lines,
Barlow.
really, sorry, on the Class Q, was it for 4 houses? Was it splitting the barns into four dwellings? 5. So actually, if they'd built the Class Q, we would have had more houses than if the 4 that we're putting forward now. And if they were to reapply, you're saying that you don't think they would get that? Is that what I read in the report? On Class Q.
I mean, obviously, it would depend on the subject of. It would depend on an assessment of another application coming forward. If they submitted the same application that they previously submitted, it would not be successful.
I think that's because under Class Q, the buildings have to be capable of conversion and so on, and reasonably structurally
Well, it's because
sound.
of the minimum space standards, the technically described national minimum space standards, and also because of the condition of the building having been exposed to the elements for another 3 years. It's overgrown and deteriorated, and it would still be necessary for the applicant to prove that it was capable of conversion.
Okay, thank you. Steve, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. My question has just been answered, actually. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Levine.
Can I go back to an old hobby horse of mine? You can't live in rural Devon without a car. There are no transport points. There's nothing. So if you're going to say no application in rural Devon, it's got to be refused because there is a car, rural Devon is going to die in its feet. And that's what bothers me. Thank you.
Yep, unfortunately, that's not what our local plan says, and there are, of course, always exception sites. And I think quite a few villages around here would say they're seeing quite a lot of development. So it's obviously not impossible. I take your point, but the position of the local plan and of government guidance is that we should not add to the need to travel by car. I think I've got to support that, particularly as we all know there's far more traffic on the road than even 25 years ago, which of course is another reason for the number of potholes, but nobody ever mentions that. Any other questions for officers or anybody? No? Oh, you've got another one, Yehudi.
Yes, I just want to know, Class Q, I thought that it came from a James Bond film script.
That's just Q. Yeah. But he was classy, yeah. Okay, so we're into debate then, if there's no further questions. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm gonna, I think, support the officers. I'm a little bit concerned. We've been here loads of times trying to build houses in areas where we think they are sort of acceptable. We're about to build 10,000 people home village next door to it, but that's not there yet, which would obviously make it more sustainable. We've been here 100 times before, as I said. We can't argue for houses in the environment other than when the balance, the tilted balance, as we're always told. And we have been told this time by our officers that the tilted balance is not, does not come into, well, they've balanced it up and the balance is against it because it's unsustainable. If the client or the person applying for this had done anything on the Class Q, I don't quite understand why they wouldn't have done, because it's literally a matter of putting in a footing and saying we have made a start, a substantial start, which always makes me laugh, but that basically means you have, in which case, are we saying that if they had done that and there was the Part Q was something there as a backup, would we then have to allow this? Is that what we're saying?
If the Class Q is still extant, then that would be a material consideration which would provide a fallback position in terms of housing within the countryside. But without that fallback position, there is no material consideration on which to base a departure from the local plan.
And if there had been, of course, we would have been taking 5 houses compared to 4 houses, which wouldn't have helped our balance on the other bit we're trying to balance against. In which case, I will make a motion to accept officers' recommendations as written. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Oh, several. I think Councillor Ragg was in my ear there, so I'll let you second that one, Eileen. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on this one? No? You're all very quiet. You want your lunch, I know. Okay, in that case, we can go to a vote. So all in favour of refusal as proposed by Councillor Barlow, seconded by Councillor Ragg. I think I can probably safely vote on this one as well.
5, 6, 7.
There's another one gone.
Come on now, people. If you're going to do it,
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay.
11
Any
in favour.
Any against? Any against? No, no. Any against?
I said 11 in support.
Are you going to vote against, Brian? Very well.
1. No abstentions. That's
No, well, I've just said, do we have any votes against? Fine. 1 against. Any abstentions?
no. That counts to 12. So
Oh, well, that's fine then. Okay, members, you can have your lunch. We will, apologies to everyone who has turned up for agenda item 12, land south of Cortlands Lane. I see a few familiar faces there. Hello, Tim. But we've had a very long morning on the first application, which took over 3 hours. And therefore, we are going to break for lunch. And then we have one more application. Good question. Shall we say 2:15? Just over half an hour. Okay,